more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, getting your Winnipeg Jets game day started off right. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. All about the Jets, all about the Jets and the Senators. We got 2 hours of coverage leading up to this afternoon's matinee in the general vicinity of our nation's capital. Gentlemen,
I agree with the comment that we've got up right there from Stu Smith. Like, it feels like, guys, it's been like a week and a half since the last Jets game. It really does. Like, I realize it's been 3 days, obviously, between Jets games. But what I'm saying, guys, is that I've been craving this Jets afternoon game between the Sens and the Jets.
Craving, and anytime Ezzy gets cravings, watch out, folks. That usually ends ugly for something or
I also
someone.
craved pancakes this morning, and I looked around, and Spency wasn't around, so I had no pancakes.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's upsetting on multiple different levels. But yes, the Jets and the Senators, it's a matinee affair. It'll be a 2:00 Central puck drop, which means post-game show right around 4:45 later on this afternoon. So you start your day with Illegal Curve, and then you end your afternoon with Illegal Curve before you do whatever you want to do during your Saturday evening. Dave,
I thought you were about to say there was going to be an Illegal Curve sleepover, Drew. I wasn't sure where you were going with that, but
I was not going anywhere near that concept. So that's where your brain's at. That's your business and your business only. Dave, I'm good to see you on this Saturday morning. How are things? You'll talk about the Moose a little bit later, but they had a victory within their hands, and then it was snatched away as their losing streak continues, unfortunately.
I would suggest they gave it away, to be honest with you, Drew.
Fair.
But regardless, the Moose will be the final thing we do today. So it'll be this show, of course. Then we have the Jets game at 2:00. We have the IC post game show around, what'd you say, 4:40, and then we've got the Moose and Griffins rematch at 6:00. So we've already given away all those tickets, but we'll have tickets more for the games against Chicago, which are on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I'll be doing color on Tuesday night, so you can hear me if you want to listen on the radio.
There you go. Nice to hear. That's something to look forward to. So the Jets and the Senators, as we mentioned, the first time these two teams will have played this year, unless the Jets already played the Senators in Winnipeg, and I forgot, which is entirely possible. And as he mentioned, it's been a bit of we're into a soft spot in the schedule finally. After the reason why it seems like it's been so long is because when you play 3 and 4 nights, for almost 2 consecutive weeks, it feels as though you're just nonstop with the games and the post games and everything else along those lines. But the Jets have been off the ice since their victory on Tuesday against the New York Islanders. They had a Wednesday complete off, an optional on Thursday, then a full skate on Friday.
The team was on the ice though Thursday. Dave M, I believe, was there.
Yeah,
right. I'm pretty sure Dave went to like 9 practices, and I called Dave out at one point. He was covering both practices with like images and video from both practices. I literally don't know how he does it, but I'm pretty sure, Dave, you attended like 5 or 6 practices this week.
I did. And it was funny though, because I walked into the Hockey for All Center to cover the Moose on Thursday. And their practice began, I don't remember the time. And it was funny because I saw a bunch of security guys there, and that I know obviously from being at the arena. And I said, "What are you guys doing here? It's Moose practice. You guys are never usually here for Moose." And then that's when I started to sniff. I got an inkling that the Jets might be around. So then I started to watch most Moose practice, and then I think it started at 10:30. And then I walked over to the other rink at the Hockey for All, and I noticed that the Jets had set up. So I was just curious because we weren't anticipating. They thought they'd be off for the 2 days. And yeah, like as he said, there were almost 10 Jets plus Jason Kasdorf, the practice goaltender, who, of course, as folks will remember, was a 2011 6th rounder, I believe, or 7th rounder.
Yeah.
But
I actually remember. Sorry, I'm going to pull some.
Oh, are you? Or if your mic dies, it doesn't pull anything.
His mic seems to have died, so he'll figure it out sooner.
There you go, Ezzy. Now you're good.
Not sure what happened there, guys. But Remus and I was going to say, we're in St. Paul in 2011, and we actually talked to the Kasdorf family after he was drafted. I think it was the 6th round or the 7th round.
I think so, yeah.
It was a late round pick.
Yeah.
So obviously, nice to see him around the Jets organization as well. I just wanted to get that in there because it was pretty cool for him being a Manitoba kid and everything like that.
No, for sure. And so he was out there, and he helps these teams whenever they need. Actually, it's funny. One day he actually was with the Moose as the practice goaltender, and then switched rinks and was actually the Jets practice goaltender. So he, like me, was a busy guy that day. And anyways, I'm just saying that it was just interesting because I wasn't anticipating that the Jets would be skating, and sure enough, there were 10 guys who were on the ice wanting to get their legs going. And it was funny.
I imagine he would be the e-bug, by the way, for the Jets, right?
I think so. Yeah, I believe so. But maybe not always, but generally, I think maybe usually. But I'm not entirely certain about that.
It's either him or Drew. So
yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
But what I was going to say though is that it was just funny though because then Rick Bowness yesterday when he spoke before they left for Ottawa was like, well, actually the guys approached me and they wanted to, because I think he was almost felt like they had been dishonest because he said they were going to be off the ice for 2 days. And instead, some of the guys hit the ice there was no media availability. So we didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance since nobody else was there to speak to them. But we still, like I said, got an idea that they skated, and obviously they wanted to stay sharp and get the legs moving. So that's a good thing for the Jets.
Yeah, and I know you shouldn't read too much into something like that, but I think it is a good sign just how dialed in this team is and continues to be as they reaffirm themselves as one of the top teams in the NHL and everything else. As we have these last 4 games really before the All-Star break starting this afternoon in Ottawa, then we know that they go to Boston on Monday and Toronto on Wednesday, and then back to Winnipeg on Saturday to wrap up the pre-All-Star break, pre-bye week schedule. This team continues to have that laser focus, and there was some talk yesterday when they met after practice about the second half slide last year, and we've all said that we don't foresee any vision of that slide. It just doesn't seem like it's in the cards for this team.
Well, the Jets, Drew, weren't number 1 in the league when it comes to goals against, right? So, I mean, right there, that's the huge difference. The special teams we've talked about, I mean, that's still an area of concern. Bit better, even though I'd say over the last few weeks it's been pretty good. But you're absolutely right. I mean, to compare this year's team, there's no Blake Wheeler and there's no Pierre-Luc Dubois, and the backup goaltending is Laurent Brossoit.
Okay, as he's having some microphone troubles is what I'm finding out, is that he's cutting out. So as we'll let you deal with those mic troubles briefly here. Well, what I was going to say, Dave, is the conversation is ramping up regarding, of course, the trade deadline and additions to the team. And there was discussions yesterday about the ability or the difficulty in acclimatizing a player to the room, and the Jets really because there's always that debate. Do you want to ruin chemistry? Do you want to do anything to impact the chemistry of a team that's going so well? And then the Jets sort of poo-pooed that idea because of how strong this team is and in the dressing room so far this year, which I certainly I took to mean like the players themselves. Yes, it's going to result in some lineup shuffling and lineup juggling, but the players themselves are interested in gearing up for a lengthy playoff run. That was my sort of read between the lines of all that noise from yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. And Rick Bowness spoke about that specifically, asking about, new players being brought in and whether that could impact the chemistry of this group. And he said, look, this group is going to welcome anyone. So it's about those new players being adaptable and willing to jump on to the bandwagon and be part of this team and adapt and become, I guess what he was suggesting is that this is not a closed room. And for years, we've talked about the Moose as a open place where anybody could have a voice, whether you're a brand new guy or a 10-year vet. And I think now that's what we're seeing with this Jets club, is that is a place where young guys have a voice, the older guys have a voice. I mean, we know that Adam Lowry's a hell of a good leader, and he's going to be the kind of guy who's going to be inclusive and welcoming. And I think part of that, again, even though he was only sent to the Moose for 5 games, I think that idea that he knows what it's like to be sent down, so he can understand, he can empathize with guys who are on the bubble, like the Toninatos and the Aclions and Fielbys, what they're dealing with, that idea of constantly worrying, like, am I doing enough to stay up? And again, because he's become, such an integral part of an NHL club, he also can speak to the Mark Scheifele's and the Cole Perfettis and that sort of thing. So I think this team has become a lot more inclusive. And I think that it's just that idea that, as long as people are willing to be part of what the Jets have built here, then there are no problems. If you want to be an individual, and again, not to say that you can't have individual characteristics, you don't have to get rid of your personality. Right. And, there was a good article yesterday, I think in the Sun, as he talking about, personalities and Alex Iafallo and how he'll be willing to go and get in the Jeep and, go on a trail and go exploring by himself.
He loves the outdoors, loves the Manitoba outdoors. I'm not sure if anybody can hear this right now.
We can hear you. You're fine right now. We'll tell you if you're not.
I'm not sure what was going on there because I'm checking my connections. I'm checking my volume. So I don't know if there's a ghost in my microphone or what's going on, but
I'm not certain. It could be ghosts of holiday past, but regardless, I'm just saying that I think that there's a idea that you can still be an individual, but you just have to adapt to be willing to play Winnipeg Jets hockey, which has now become an identifiable thing.
Yeah.
And as long as you're willing to adapt to that system, I don't think the team is going to have any problems absorbing anybody new. Now, of course, you're going to have to deal with guys who are now in the lineup who may not be in the lineup. So you're going to have to, that's a coach thing, but ultimately
they're also around the team. Sorry, Dave. I was going to say, right. Like you were at Moose practice. You talked to Ville Heinola. A great job by the way. Try.
Yeah. Ezzy, you're still having trouble, so maybe you should restart your computer or something. I'm not sure what's going on there. I know it's a frustrating occurrence. It's frustrating for everybody, but yeah, you
guys. What I'm going to do is I'll log out and then I'll come right back.
Okay.
Everybody in the chat, don't worry. I'll be right back. I think Drew and Dave, you'll be okay.
I hope so, and we'll see if we let you back in or not. That'll be the real question mark about it all.
Okay.
But anyways, we'll try and get Ezzy's issues resolved there, or at least his computer issues. The other ones might take longer and might not be best suited for an on-air broadcast. But so you can tell that as we're getting closer now to the trade deadline, even though it's still a number of weeks away, these are the discussions that are occurring. We know that the Jets had their pro scouting meetings in Florida. This past week, Dave, so many of those, that's why that tweet, I think, went a little bit, I don't know, went viral, but people noticed and were curious as to why there were so many Jet scouts at that Panthers Red Wings game. It's because the Jets were down there holding their meetings earlier this week. But, you're beginning now to sort of narrow down your focus on the targets. And the question is, of course, is it second line center? Is it a depth defenseman? Is it a forward that maybe can play on the wing as well? These are the names, the names, the Sean Monahans, the Adam Henriques, Chris Tanev, Elias Lindholm. These are the names they're at the forefront of the conversation. But the more I sort of consider it, the defense to me, it would not be necessarily where I would be prioritizing an upgrade right now. I hear people saying, the Jets need a defensive defenseman. And I don't think that's really where my priority is.
Their names are Dylan DeMello and Dylan.
If Ezzy's talking, I can't hear him again, so I don't know. Ezzy, maybe just completely restart your computer altogether would be my advice at this point. There you go. But I don't know that unless you are, there needs to be a significant upgrade from my perspective based on just how good the defense has been playing. Maybe an offensive defenseman to step in and maybe move Neil Pionk down a little bit and solidify that second pairing from the offensive perspective, Dave, would be a course of action. But on the back end, just how everything is going so well, I don't know that you necessarily need to. I hear defensive defenseman. Well, it just seems to me that those are easier words to say than actually mean anything when it comes to acquiring a player.
Well, I mean, look, it really, I think that there's some folks who are talking about Chris Tanev out of Calgary, and obviously he had some time here with the Manitoba Moose. So, I mean, he would be familiar with the organization, and he's a player, I guess, that, some folks would be interested in acquiring. But again, I'm the question for me is, do you want someone who's going to bump Vlad Nemesnikov down? Kind of like when the Jets in 17-18 got Paul Stastny, and then, is my internet now screwing up, or am I still good?
You're good.
Okay. No, but anyways, I was going to say when the Jets acquired Paul Stastny and bumped Brian Little, if you remember, down, and then suddenly the Jets were a lot more dynamic in 17-18. So can the Jets do something similar where they bump Vlad Nemesnikov down to fourth line center. And sorry, like Dominic Toninato, I think has done a very admirable job. But, you know, if you could have Vlad Nemestikov as your fourth line center and you bring in a second line center that solidifies this group, wins faceoffs, does the things that this team needs to do.
Right.
I mean, that to me is where you're overall. Now, again, like I said, it's funny how the quote insiders were essentially parroting what Kevin Cheveldayoff said, and it was all breathless. It was like the Jets need. It was like, are we serious? Like, are we actually talking about something that's interesting? And again, oftentimes insiders are not telling someone who, and that qualifies us here on the show. That qualifies the people who are watching the show, and you know, generally Jets fans. It's more to advise the rest of the league, because when they speak, you're sitting there going, okay, but why is that insightful? And you know it's not insightful because you pay attention to this stuff. So look, ultimately the Jets are, I would think is 2C is your upgrade.
Yeah. That's
your need. If you can augment the right side of your defense and bring someone in like a Chris Tanev type, doesn't have to be Chris Tanev specifically. And we don't know what Calgary's doing because they went on a bit of a run until they lost the Leafs. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, if you can bring someone in like that with size, with strength, that guy who can play defensive, you know, physical playoff hockey, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because even though your defense has been good, you always have to think like I said, it's like what happened to the Jets in years past. You lost Josh Morrissey in the playoffs. You lost Mark Scheifele in the playoffs. You have to be able to, have something.
If you're talking about injury protection, totally agree. And injury protection is sort of that's you're adding in another depth defenseman that may or may not necessarily be in your lineup on a regular basis. And teams always are interested in doing that, and they pay a very low price for a guy who is largely you'd never expect to be in your lineup come playoff time, in an ideal world. You're talking about
Joe Morrow, the big acquisition in 17-18.
Well, and he
overtime hero. What did he get the overtime game winner in game one?
He got because the game didn't go to overtime. It was a third period goal he scored. The Jets were down 1-0 to Minnesota. Then I think I don't remember if he got the tying goal right now or if he got the winning goal. But I remember
the winning goal.
It was bizarre that of all people, it was Joe Morrow to get to get the Jets.
It was not Joe Mama. It was Joe Morrow.
There you go. But again, I look at this Jets team and you can sort of see, you have an offensive defenseman with a defensive defenseman. So if you're upgrading on the defensive defenseman side, are you, is Chris Tanev, or if he's the name, and I'm just saying, is he that much of a name? Is he an upgrade? If you want an offensive guy with a defensive guy, is he an upgrade over Sandberg or Dillon? Because he's not necessarily, replacing anybody. He's not doing anything offensively. So, how is that changing the dynamic of your defense? That's what I'm concerned about, all this talk about the Jets need a defensive defenseman. If you actually look at the defensive defensemen that are on their team, that'd be DeMello, that would be Sandberg, that would be Dillon. Those three guys have been performing pretty admirably.
I don't know, Drew. Brendan Dillon's a pretty good
he's a sniper scorer this year.
Yeah.
But but if you're looking to maybe upgrade an offensive defenseman, in all due respect to Nate Schmidt, who I think is playing better hockey since he was sat down for those number of games, maybe all of a sudden you're getting somebody to be that second pairing offensive defenseman, and that maybe moves Pionk down a little bit so that his chaos isn't necessarily in a second line defense or in a second pairing role. It's more in a third pairing role, and that's how you're upgrading on the back end. I mean, yes, Sean Walker, certainly a name that has been talked about, and he's certainly more of an offensive-minded defenseman. He's a good skater. He's a good puck mover, and we know how much of an emphasis Rick Bowness has been placing on puck movement and offense from the defense, in the course of his 2 years here as Jets head coach. We welcome Ezzy back, and hopefully the microphone.
Can you hear me, boys?
We can hear you now. Yeah, so
hopefully a computer restart helped. So, just on the topic, obviously, I wasn't listening to the last, 5 minutes or whatever. Sean Walker, the Flyers are second in the Metro.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, like, all this talk of guys like Travis Kinect, like, why would you make any moves right now? And you can make the same argument for the Jets, who have been on this incredible point streak that was only upset by the Philly Flyers, right? But, some of the names that Drew threw out recently, I think, are absolutely in play. I'm not sure if you mentioned Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson is a guy, guys, to me, would be at the top of my list. I've kind of gotten a little off the Sean Monahan bandwagon. I mean, I think Monahan would be a good acquisition for the Jets. Entire career he's played for the Devils. But to me, like Sean Monahan and Adam Henrique are in the second tier, whereas I have Brock Nelson in the top tier. And at the end of the day, guys, it all depends on what do the Jets have to give up. And again, I'm not sure if you guys were talking about Elias Lindholm, for example.
Not yet.
But if anybody thinks the Jets are going to get Elias Lindholm without giving up a first-round pick and a prospect, they're kidding themselves.
But it's too big of a price. I mean,
that's what I'm saying, Drew.
Like, he's going to Colorado or
I think Adam Henrique.
Or Boston.
Adam Henrique, you can probably get for a second-round pick.
Yeah,
Sean Monahan, you could probably get for a second-round pick. Brock Nelson, I think you would have to give up a first-round pick and a prospect. And Brad Lambert, it's probably a guy like Chaz Lucius or maybe a Ville Heinola. I think Rutger McGroarty is an untouchable guy. I've said that before. I think Rutger McGroarty has such a high ceiling. You know, he could be a 60 to 80 point guy in the NHL and a future captain, possibly. For those who don't know, he just captained Team USA to the gold at the 2024 World Juniors in Sweden, right? So I'm just saying Brock Nelson is a guy, if he's available. Nelson's a guy that really intrigues me. As far as Chris Tanev, another guy, I think Toronto really is after him from reports that we've heard, right? I think there's probably going to be, Dave, a handful of teams that are going to be inquiring about Chris Tanev. But Calgary is also in a playoff race right now. Calgary is not out of it.
But no, I mean, if they're being honest with themselves, they're not what they shouldn't be holding on to players that have
true. But how much do they look like the Jets from last year, right? Where they're the top two players right now on the trade bait boards are both of theirs, and they're a team that looks like they could maybe sneak in and possibly be like an 8th seed in the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm just saying that
they're like 3 points out of a wild card spot.
Right, but then they're done in 5 games. So I mean, again, it's well, look, I if you're Calgary,
would you rather make the playoffs or miss the playoffs?
Well, if you're the ownership, and if you're the players, you'd obviously rather make the playoffs. I mean, but all
I'm saying is that I think the price tag for Elias Lindholm is going to be very high, and I think there's going to be a lot of teams. I'm just saying, this seems to happen often when the Jets are in first place in the division. Jets fans want all the top players on the trade bait board. It's just not going to happen. It's unrealistic. When has it ever happened?
Except
Paul Stastny was not that guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Look, I mean, I don't think it's a function of the Jets. I think most Jets, observers would agree that the price on Elias Lindholm is too high to pay. Given the options. And remember, when the Jets did acquire Paul Stastny, he came out of nowhere. No one ever really bandied about his name, which, speaks to Kevin Cheveldayoff's ability to sort of, maybe fly a little bit under the radar and target players, Dave, that aren't necessarily at the forefront. Because I think that Elias Lindholm is probably a bit of a non-starter, at least given the price that Calgary would be asking for him. And I don't think the Jets should pay that either. No. I just don't think I think there's better options at a lower price than Elias Lindholm, Dave.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, again, like I said earlier, to me, he's a Boston or Colorado target, despite the fact that Colorado's pretending like, Gabe Landeskog is going to come back after not playing for 2 years. But I really do.
Back.
No. And so to me, it's more just, like, again, we don't see Kevin Cheveldayoff big game hunting. And that's not to say he can't get a good player, because Paul Stastny, as we've spoken about, and as everyone in 2017-18 remembers, he was a significant add at the trade deadline, and he was a significant piece in that Jets run. So that's, I suspect, where he's going to go again, and that's what he's going to do again, is try and go off the board, and not necessarily the Sean Monahans, but like you guys said, like maybe an Adam Henrique out of Anaheim. And I'm with Ez, like, it's hard to, and it's interesting because when you watch Philadelphia, and folks are picking apart guys that they want to acquire, and Travis Sanheim and Walker and all these other players, but it's tough to see how the Philly's going to do that. But at the same time, if you listen to what John Tortorella said, and not that we're big John Tortorella guys here, but he did speak the other day on, I think it was CSN Philly, maybe. But regardless, he spoke and he essentially said, look, we have a plan. So even though we're currently probably a little bit ahead of schedule, there's kind of like a long-term vision in Philly. And I wonder if there still will be pieces that are dealt, even though they are currently, as he says, a strong team right now and a playoff team. I do wonder if, because they're trying to execute a long-term vision, they're willing to trade some pieces. So I think that what we've seen from Kevin Cheveldayoff, again, I mean, would anybody in the chat, and we can get the chat involved here, would anybody in the chat before we bring on Paul Edmonds be surprised if the Jets upgrade at 2C and augment their defense with a right shot defenseman? No, I mean, I don't think
Here's a name.
Your mic still cuts out, Ezzy. I don't know what's going on with the mic today, unfortunately, but yeah.
Well, we're gonna do a little mic swap in the.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what. Why don't we do this? Paul Edmonds is going to join us from Ottawa, where he's of course going to call today's Jets Senators game. So why don't we head to our first commercial break of the morning? Dave is going to be Mr. IT Fix It and see if we can try out something to do with Ezzy's mic, and we'll get back to talking about the Jets with Paul Edmonds in a couple minutes. It is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's a Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it! Again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
9:30 in the morning. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave and Ezzy working on some technical difficulties, so you're stuck with me right now until we bring on our good friend Paul Edmonds coming up in a couple of moments' time. Some Winnipeg Blue Bombers news on this Saturday morning. Just announced the Bombers have re-signed Drew Wolotarski to a 2-year contract. He was a pending unrestricted free agent, and of course now he is going to be a member of the Bombers for 2 more years. Canadian receiver Drew Wolotarski returning to the Bombers. With that brief interlude out of the way, we are pleased to welcome to the program the voice of the Winnipeg Jets on CJOB and Power 97. Our good friend Paul Edmonds joins us. Paulie, now what? Hang on. Is there actually things written on those pieces of paper, or is it just for optics?
There used to be a saying about when you have that office environment to make sure that if you're walking around, you'll carry some papers around, right? Because it makes it look like you're working or doing something important. No, that was actually my format. I was just kind of putting my format back together and getting ready for the broadcast today at 2:00 Central, 3:00 Eastern, where I'm at.
There you go, Paulie, joining us from the vicinity of our nation's capital. As I'm pretty sure if you look out your hotel room in Kanata, you cannot see Parliament Hill. But nonetheless, the Jets and the Senators will do battle this afternoon on Hockey Day in Canada. So always a nice little salute to hockey in this country with today's broadcast there, Mr. Edmonds.
Actually, we're not in Kanata anymore. The last 2 years, this year including, we've stayed downtown, which is nice. And last year, I got to kind of peruse around the Parliament buildings.
Yes.
It's been a pretty quick trip in here today, and then we're going to get back out to Boston after the game's done. But it's a really nice place. I mean, listen, anybody that tells you that they don't have snow and it's not cold here is lying, because it actually is. There's probably more snow here than back home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little chillier than it was when we left yesterday because the wind was nasty when we got off the plane. So really, Winnipeg's got nothing on Ottawa or vice versa when it comes to the weather.
No question about it. I spent a few years in Ottawa many a moon ago, and it was certainly not warm, and it was certainly snowy as well. There's Dave Emmett decided to join us back as we're trying to resuscitate Ezzy and or his computer simultaneously.
It's not working so well.
Yeah, no, Dave is a man of many talents. We'll see if he's able to pull this one off. Paulie obviously brought you on. We haven't spoken to you really that much. I mean, off air, we, of course, chat. We haven't had you on the show.
I talk to Paul almost every day. What are you talking about?
That's what I said. Off air. On air, we haven't had the opportunity to chat with him, that at least in a couple of months' time. I think since the Fan Fest, you joined us at Fan Fest. So that was at the beginning. It's amazing where this team has gone in those 4 months since Fan Fest. Always optimism, early in the year before the season starts, but now the results of that optimism paying off, and this team is now sky high towards the top of the NHL standings. Just being around the team night in and night out, Paulie, I mean, you just must feel the vibe and the belief that they have for one another as they've been embarking on this journey.
And I think that extends to the fan base and then certainly broadcasters. You just get a feeling when you're watching this team all the time, and certainly this isn't a company line and it's just made up, but there's always a time where they've gotten behind by a goal and they get to the middle of the second period, they're still behind, and they're patient, they're playing their game.
Mm-hmm.
They've talked about that for the last couple of years to make sure that they're comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. But there's always been the belief now that has permeated through this room, and by extension, everybody that follows or watches this team, that they're not out of it. I mean, there's games where you used to feel a few years ago where they fell behind by a goal or two, and it probably was going to be lights out. Not with this group. They seem to find a way to grind right through the 60 minutes, as cliche as that is. Their ability to play any way you want them to play, I think, is unique with this group as well. I mean, if you want to go up and down the ice and pass the baton and skate the 5x200, they can do that. Then try to outskill you. If you want to grind it out along the walls or in the corners, they can certainly play that game. They're tough. They're team tough. And then they've got the combination. If you want to do all of that in a game, in a 60-minute hockey game, they can do that. So, yeah, it's been interesting this year to follow this team. I like the way they're situated. I don't think it's any fluke that they're fighting for first place and 2 points back with a couple of games in hand on Vancouver, and Boston's right in there as well. And you're going to get to see them coming up on Monday. That should be an interesting game. Not looking too far ahead, gentlemen, because I know Boston wasn't very happy about coming in before the holiday break and getting kind of curb stomped by the Jets in their last game before Christmas and the holidays. So there's probably looking are the Boston Bruins for some redemption and a little revenge when they get at home against Winnipeg. But this game here this afternoon is going to be important. I think one of the things that the Jets have done so well is not looking past an opponent where they are in the standings versus where the Jets are in the standings. And I think case in point, Drew, David, and I think as he's joined us now, is when you look back at that last California trip and the Jets were able to take care of their business against teams like Anaheim, San Jose, and then certainly Arizona, who's fallen below the playoff line as well.
Paul, one of the things that Rick Bowness was asked about yesterday was the idea of absorbing new players and how is the culture going to handle that? And can the chemistry be thrown off because, they're adding something new to this mix? And I thought his answer was very interesting because he basically talked about that idea of, how this team can absorb anyone. So what do you think about that, his response, but also just the general team's ability to be able to take a new player in or two if they are getting added by Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Dave, I want to read you a couple of quotes that in the last couple of weeks that have come up from both Kevin Cheveldayoff and certainly from Rick Bowness yesterday. I mean, Kevin said not that long ago, it's always about fit. If there's not a fit, you shouldn't do something, I think was his quote. Yesterday when they were talking about, chasing success, elite teams are driven by the room and not by the coach. And I'm not worried about the room accepting anybody. The issue would be the character we're bringing in, was the quote from Rick Bowness yesterday. So I think what that says is that both upper management and the coaching staff and the players to a degree are well situated mentally for understanding the type of player that needs to come in. Certainly, if you're going to make a move and divulge some assets to another organization to get a highly skilled player, it has to be the right fit for these guys, right? You don't want to upset what you've got in terms of the chemistry of what exists right now for the sake of trying to get this piece out there that you think is going to put you over the top. Sometimes maybe the best move is to not make a move at all. And I think that's what they're sort of saying here is if it's a fit, we're going to do it. And we're going to certainly look at an area or two that we might need to upgrade. But if there's no fit there, we're quite prepared to go with what we have.
Yeah, which I think speaks to the confidence that they have within the team and how they don't want to upset the apple cart. That old expression. In keeping a good thing rolling, given where the Jets currently reside in the standings and where the play has dictated that they should be, throughout the course of this season. Paul Edmonds, Winnipeg Jets broadcaster for Power 97 CJOB, is our guest. He'll call the Jets and the Senators later on this afternoon. Paul. It's sort of, we've been watching this team for so many years now, and all of us have in all of our various roles that we've held. But the current streak that they're on with I think it's now 33 straight games with 3 goals or less. To me, I don't think that this is really getting spoken about enough. Throughout the league, and just how impressive this achievement is. This isn't just human nature is that you're going to have a letdown where you might give up 2 goals and then a fluky third one gets in or something like that. To go the length of time that they've gone with not giving up basically anything more than 2 goals in regulation time, to me, is one of the more impressive team achievements of recent memory in the NHL.
I think it speaks to the commitment of their defensive scheme that's improved from the start of last year to where they are now. And, Dave, you talked about what Rick was talking about yesterday when he addressed the media before the team got on the plane about the fit and a possible, amalgamation of a couple of guys in here to help the team. There was also questions about that, Drew, they're posed yesterday as well. Mm-hmm. And, Rick talks succinctly about the fact that this just didn't start at the start of this year. It all started last year when they brought in their new scheme, their new plan on how they were going to play defense. And that's Rick Bowness and associate coach Scott Arniel, masterminding their defensive systems. And I think part of it is they get up the ice and they pressure. So it's not just about falling back inside their own blue line and then defending there. But the one thing that I found interesting was that, a couple of times last year, they were talking about, the team would kind of default back to the way they played before. They're not doing that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think because it's become more ingrained. What's more ingrained? Well, the style of play that the coaching staff wants this group to play with. And we all know this because we've all played sports, none of us very well, but we've all played. When you just react and play and don't think, you're a much better player than you are when you have to think. And when you think, you slow down. And one of the things that the Jets have not done this year is slow down when they played, because I think that the system, the the ability to absorb it and then just go out and not have to think about it has helped them. And listen, you've got a great goaltender, a very good 1-2 punch when it comes to your goaltending, and it really starts from there. But I tell people that want to ask that question about 33 straight games of 3 goals or less and what they've been able to do in December and January with a record of 17-2-2 in the combined 6 or 7 weeks. It's just unthinkable when you were going into this wondering how this team was going to do. But it's the pressure up the ice. It's the ability to defend, not just in your own zone, but defend when you don't have the puck, whether that's in the opposing zone, in the neutral zone, or your own zone. And I think another quote that Rick had was, we're not the biggest team, but we're a pressure team. And I think that speaks to what they want to do when it comes to not having the puck and defending without it.
Good morning, Paulie. I apologize for not being here for the beginning of the interview. There was a ghost in my microphone. I mean, Paulie, you know better than anybody about broadcasting. Sometimes stuff like that happens. We tried a second mic. Now I'm back to the original Yeti mic. So I hope I'm coming in clear here, and I hope I don't cut out. Well, I guess defer to the chat if there's any issues. But so I didn't hear the first couple questions, Paulie, but I wanted to ask you about, and I obviously, there's 7 weeks to go before the trade deadline. So a lot of people are talking about, the names out there, Elias Lindholm, Chris Tanev. You've heard of all the names out there, Sean Monahan. But I look at a guy like Dominic Toninato, and he's a perfect example to me, of how, not just how good the Jets forward depth is 1 through 12, but how good it is 1 through 16, right? Because last game against the Islanders, you had Dominic Toninato fitting in quite nicely on that third line. I think you'd agree. Everyone's talking about maybe the Jets need a bottom 9 winger or a 2C, everything like that. But you've got David Gustafsson, who's the only other injured player in addition to Mark Scheifele. You've got Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, who's now, I guess, the quote-unquote 13th forward. Like, it's just amazing to me. I guess, can you just talk about how amazing it's been to just see any guy that comes up from the Moose or any other position seems to fit in so nicely. And also just specifically Toninato, who's only played, I think, 9 or 10 games with the Moose. And I think he's into 6 or 7 now with the Jets. I forget exactly how long it is, but I mean, it just seems like the Jets they never seem to let injuries be an excuse for them.
Well, first off, does the Yeti mic hold the heat?
That's funny.
It does? Yeah.
That's funny.
It does? Okay, good.
My wife, Naomi, always gets these Yeti mugs, and then she ends up losing them a month later. I'm like, you're wasting $50, Naomi, but she continues to get them. So
I have been thoroughly impressed with Dominic Toninato and his ability to jump back up again. You wondered, there was that year, it was during the taxi squad year, he came up and played 2 games during the COVID season, and the speed was what jumped out at me. And then he ended up playing for the majority of the next year, and then kind of not disappeared, but kind of fell off the bottom of the depth chart on the Jets, and then ended up going to the Moose, and has been a really good soldier there. I just, the ability for him to re-sign, and they really like it, that being Dom's family and Dom in Winnipeg. And if you're going up and down, you might as well be in the same place. I think there's an advantage to that. Very few teams have that going on. I mean, Winnipeg and San Jose with the Barracuda have had that going on for a number of years. But one thing that Dom's done is he's become I think a complete pro. He's now 30 years old. He understands his role. He's accepted the role that he's maybe going to be that bubble guy. But right now he hasn't been. He's got the best faceoff percentage on the team at 51%. I mean, and how do you know how valuable he's become in a short period of time under Rick Bowness since this recent call-up? Rick Bowness has got him in the last 5 minutes, the last 3 minutes, the last 2 minutes, taking defensive zone faceoffs, right? Just for the faceoff coming over the boards and doing that. And then vaulting him into the third line. Well, the absence of Mark Scheifele still has created a hole, but you've moved everybody up the depth chart, and this has been great for Dominic Toninato. I like, there's a success story here that I think we all cheer for. But to speak to the depth, Ezzy, that you're talking about, I mean, go back a number of years, and Paul Maurice said, and I think in his early tenure as the Jets head coach, he said, we'll finally arrive as an organization when we have others pushing in from our minor league affiliate. And that's what you're seeing with the Jets. I mean, through and through, all the way down to the Moose, there's guys that can just step in because they play the same system. They're coached that way. The two coaching staffs are on the same page. And I mean, there's a real good symbiotic relationship between the two of them. So a guy like Dom comes up and doesn't have to really, again, think about what he's doing. He just reacts to it. And it's been, I think, part of why you might tread lightly when it comes to the addition of somebody else at the deadline because of some of the players that you have. Like, do you want to squeeze a Dominic Toninato out? I don't know. I mean, the way he's playing, he's probably earned a job for this time going forward. Not to mention the fact that there is a Minnesota connection on this team, and he fits in very well with that. There is a UMD connection with all the Bulldogs they have, and he fits in very well with that. It's all about the room, and we don't hear about the clickiness of the room anymore. Everybody gets along. Everybody hangs with everybody, and I think Dominic Toninato is just one of those guys. A great story. We want to cheer for him, but he's playing real well ever since the recall from the Moose.
And Paul, he's actually gotten into 11 games with the Jets, and he's got 5 points. So you're absolutely right. It's not like he's just a seat filler like I am on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. He's actually playing really well.
Well, he also hit a post in Chicago in his first game, right?
Yeah.
That was on the 27th. He got the recall and ended up playing. And, he's been around a few more times, guys, than just the 11 games. And there's been a number of healthy scratches. And again, I am talking about how, the maturity level of a guy that understands his role, knows that he just needs to be ready. The time is going to come. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to get hurt and get bumped, bruised, nicked up, and there's going to be an opportunity. And he's just waited for that opportunity. And he's, the other thing is, an American guy that's real happy to play in Winnipeg. And, I'm happy to kind of report that stuff because I think that we have this vision or this thought that that's not the case. And it really, in reality, is that guys and players want to play in Winnipeg. Part of it is they're winning, but it's the renewed culture that I think exists within the organization and the team right now as well that is an attractant.
Well, and Paul, I think there was a little tell yesterday at practice for those who were paying attention because all the players were wearing their regular jerseys. Dom Toninato was wearing the Fly the 48s, which they'll be wearing when the Leafs come back to town. So he's working in his Fly the 48s because he didn't play in the game against Carolina, but he was the only player wearing them yesterday in practice. So he was.
Look at that. I'm pretty sure that's analytics by Dave Minuk right there, folks. You don't need numbers. He's just doing jersey analysis.
I was looking at equipment analysis right there. So maybe that's a little bit of a tell. But anyways, Paul, I want to ask you about the captain of this team, Adam Lowry. And we talk about culture, and we know it starts with him. And we're not here to look backwards. We're just looking forwards, as Rick Bowness often says. So what have you seen from Adam Lowry? And again, it's not a huge deviation from, I think, what we saw from him throughout his years. He was always had a big voice. But now as captain, what have you seen from him through the first half of this season?
This may sound strange, Dave and guys, but he hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing that I've seen from Adam Lowry. There's been no change in the way he plays on the ice, the way that he is led, whether he's had a letter or not, and the way that he treats people around the team. There's been no change whatsoever. The only change is maybe he's had a more responsibility in talking after games or practices or being a go-to guy, but he's always been a really good quote. He's always been approachable. So there's been no change, but I think that just allowing him to kind of have a voice and then him being more inclusionary. And I know there's different sort of versions of that word, but inclusionary meaning, it's how you bring others along, I think, is the definition of a true leader. If you can bring everybody into it, that's how you lead. And you have to, not just the first 5 or 10 guys, but the 23rd, 24th, and 25th player on the team needs to feel part of it, needs to feel valued. And that inclusion, I think, is what Adam's been able to do this year as the captain, but not a lot of change in his demeanor, in his character, the way he plays. And that's the biggest telltale for me, that, he all of a sudden just didn't put the C on his lapel, and he had to feel like he had to change and be somebody that he wasn't. And he's just been everything for this team. I think he embodies what I was talking about in that sort of first answer that, as you missed, And I can kind of repeat it. And that is,
and it was genius.
Yes. That's why it begs for
again. My apologies, Paulie. I'm going to blame the technology. I'm going to blame the Shure mics.
Just a quick shot to you. No, I mean, he embodies what the Winnipeg Jets are and how they play. Do you want to go up and down the ice and play that skilled game? I mean, he can do that because he can skate. Do you want to play grind it out along the wall and in the corners and in the front of the net and get to the greasy areas like his line of Appleton and Niederreiter for the most part this year has been able to drive? They can do that. Do you want to play tough? Adam Lowry can do that as well. Just hold my beer, guys. I'm going to take care of this, right? That's the kind of attitude that he's had. And he's fun at practice too. Like there was a time where not that long ago, they were having some 3-on-3 games and fooling around, and he scored a goal. And I think he turned around and chirped the other team, the other trio, and said, "See you at center ice, boys." And so that's the kind of thing that brings everybody in. But he is the exemplary example of what Winnipeg is this year. And they're led by a great guy who comes by it honestly. We always talk about his dad. I've had the opportunity to meet Elaine, his mom. And let me tell you, she had a big influence on Adam as well in a positive direction. Through all those years when Jungle Dave was playing pro hockey, there was Elaine and 4 kids at home. And she's got her stamp all over Adam as well.
Paul Edmonds, our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show later on this afternoon. The Jets and the Ottawa Senators from the nation's capital, which means the post-game show right around 4:45 p.m. or so, thereabouts, a couple minutes on either side. Paulie, looking at today's game against the Senators, we know that it's been a very disappointing year in Ottawa. This is a team that was maybe a trendy playoff pick. Well, that certainly hasn't come to fruition and isn't going to come to fruition. But at the same time, it's not a team that is devoid of talent by any stretch of the imagination. You look at the top of their lineup, especially up front, they got some real interesting guys who know how to put the puck in the net. The names of Stützle and Giroux and Brady Tkachuk and Drake Bathurst, and those guys are putting up points. Today's game, when you're playing, if you're the Jets and you're playing against the Senators team that is pretty freewheeling, doesn't really have a solid structure in how they play. How sort of additionally important is it for the Jets to make sure that they are paying attention to their details in order to combat that sort of loosey-goosey style that the Senators like to employ?
Well, I think that's even going to be more loosey-goosey because not necessarily without structure, but they're playing that they don't have to worry about having that additional pressure, right?
Right.
So let me start with what you sort of mentioned in your preamble to the question, Drew, and that is what a disappointment this year's been in Ottawa. I'm totally with you. I thought whether they were going to get into the playoffs or not, I thought they would be pushing all the way through till maybe the end of March, early April to kind of be in the fight. I mean, they're nowhere close. They're 19 points out of a playoff spot at this point. It's over. Like it's over for this year. And they've had all kinds of turmoil. Certainly the Shane Pinto thing, him holding out, and then the gambling issue, and he won't play today. He's serving the last game of a 41-game suspension, a half a season, and he will be able to play tomorrow against Philadelphia as Ottawa goes back to back. But that starts things, right? When you don't have all your ducks in a row and guys having some consternation with a contract, and then you fire the GM, you fire the coach, you bring in a new host of people to be your administrative group, but the team sells in the off season. And so it's just been kind of I don't want to call it a mess, but a lot of things and a lot of turmoil here and just the disappointment on the ice. I mean, there's enough here that I think that you have to think that at some point they're going to get this turned around. You can't have Brady Tkachuk and Stützle and Shabbat and some of these defensemen that move the puck on the back end and some of the players that they have up front without thinking years ago to the Winnipeg Jets as a younger version when Nikolai Ehlers and Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey were finding their way into this league. Well, you never had a season like this, what's going on in Ottawa. But the Jets have done a very good job of taking care of their own business. And I think one of the motivating factors is, at least for today, is, you've got a lot of Ontario guys on this team. They're coming back home. I just think of Gabe Velarde. He's got family in from Kingston. Dylan DeMello's from Ontario. He played here. Mark Scheifele is from Ontario. He won't play, but there is some connection to this province, and all eyes will be on this group. It's on nationally televised hockey day in Canada. And you're fighting for first place. If there wasn't any other motivation, you're fighting for first place. And that's a nice feather in your cap. So you need these 2 points. And as we talked about with that California trip recently, the Jets have done a very good job of not overlooking their opponent and making sure that they don't play down to anybody. Mm-hmm. And they've been very consistent in their own game. But I'm right with you. It's been a horrible year for the Ottawa Senators. And I think there was much bigger expectations than where they are currently sitting.
And we should mention, Paulie, that the Senators actually score more goals than the Jets. They're 9th in the league at 3.4 goals a game. The Jets are at 3.33. So we're talking about the Jets are 12th, I believe. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, I'm not sure how many people saw what Tim Stützle did against Montreal. The Sens won their last game 6-2. Feel free to use that on CJOB Power 97, by the way, Paulie.
Well, I'll use this one. The Jets, okay, conversely, are the only team, the last man standing, if you will, that hasn't allowed triple digits in goals against.
Yes.
They're still at 99. That could change today. But it tells you about the commitment to defense and how stingy they are in giving up any goals against.
So, well, Paulie, I'm pretty sure the Sharks gave up 99 goals in their first 4 games. So it's pretty incredible. And, I just wanted to stick with, obviously the Senators matchup tonight. And, Drew mentioned, some of the names, Drake Batherson, he's on pace for a career year. Obviously, we know Brady Tkachuk is an incredible player. I don't think Josh Norris is playing, Paulie. I think he's been skating, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Norris is playing tonight. But I wanted to ask you about Jacques Martin, because he's the winningest coach in Sens history. And the question I wanted to ask you is, are you surprised that there wasn't any kind of bump there? Because they've actually gone the other direction. They're in last place in the Eastern Conference. I think 4th last in the entire league. I mean, like Jacques Martin obviously has the pedigree, and you got Daniel Alfredson there now by his side as an assistant. But are you surprised that there wasn't any kind of Jacques Martin effect with this team? Because it seems like I said, they not only have they not improved, they've actually gotten worse in terms of all the metrics.
Yeah, 71 years old and back coaching again. 10 years with the Sens, over 700 games. Coached with the Senators, and he's been around a long time. I think today is his 1,309th game in the National Hockey League. You always think when you make a coaching change that you're going to get that coach bump, right? And you haven't seen it. Maybe it's latent with this group in Ottawa, but they wanted to, I think, get back to a more mature veteran type coach with the younger group that they have. And believe me, when you go through this roster and you see some of these players, there's still a lot of young guys here, right? And, I mean, your captain's 24 years old, and Brady Tkachuk. So, from that standpoint, I just think that you're looking for the ultimate leader that's maybe not a guy that's putting equipment on, but that has been around a few NHL wars. And that's the reason that Jacques Martin has been asked to coach again. But yeah, I'm a little shocked that they haven't had that coach bump. I guess we'll see what happens. It will be an interesting second half in Ottawa with all of what's gone on with Steve Stales and Dave Poulin and the administrative people that they brought in. And again, with Jacques Martin and Daniel Alfredson, they're trying to, I guess, rekindle some of their alumni, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that when you reach into your group of alumni and can pull them back through the organization, it's not about recycling guys. It's about understanding that some of those years that you had all those great successes with those teams that used to battle Toronto in the playoffs, that you're trying to bring some of that back, and fans, I think, gravitate to that as well. So we'll see what happens in Ottawa, but you'd like to see some progress as they go along this year, and not to make it a completely wasted season. They're not going to make the playoffs, but boy, if they can have a little bit of a run toward the end or play above the NHL 500 mark, I think would be the goal at this stage, because at this point, they're 8 games under it.
Hey, Paulie, don't count. Look, if the Senators get a regulation victory tonight, they tie the Leafs in number of regulation wins so far this year. So that's important for them.
The interesting part, and that sure is important. one thing Ottawa's got going for them is they have not lost a game in overtime or a shootout this year.
It's crazy.
I mean, when you look at 16, 24, and 0.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're a betting person, and if you see this game getting into the later stages where it's tied, I want to see what Winnipeg does if we get into overtime.
You heard it here first. 3-2 Jets in overtime, according to Paul Edmonds.
And that would be the first loss for the Ottawa Senators in that situation. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, in terms of Josh Norris, I know he's missed 4 games, Ezzy. I got a funny feeling he's going to play today.
Interesting.
Okay.
He had an amazing year last year. And I'm pretty sure he missed like the first 3 or 4 games of the season, Paulie. So he's had his numbers are offensive numbers. You'd look at them and, they would be off from last year, but he's a really good player. So
12 goals this year. I mean, missing 4 games. So we'll see what happens. I've always liked him. I always thought that he was a power play threat as well and has been since he came into the league. So, another good piece that Ottawa has. Just have to keep the guy healthy.
Paul, I got to ask you about Vlad Domestikov's comments yesterday, because I thought they were interesting when he was asked about, I think by Sean Reynolds, about whether he, embracing the idea of being a Stanley Cup contender. And he said, well, if we're not, what are we even doing here? If we're not challenging for the Stanley Cup, what are we even doing here? But I just like the attitude from Vlad Domestikov, and he's one of the best. We've had him on this show, and he's just a fantastic guy on and off when you're doing an interview or if you're just talking to him. But I just thought it was an interesting mindset. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't cocky, but he just said, that's what our expectation is, that we're going to be a contender.
Well, I think everybody talks about all 32 teams going into the start of the year in October, and that's the goal. But how many really believe it? Mm-hmm. And I don't know where the belief and the depth of it was with the Jets going in, but I'm sure going to tell you that belief and that depth of it has increased as this season's gone along. And now you've got this team looking around going, I think that we are a contender. We're beating all the good teams, and they've got a few challenges to go here. I'd like to see what's going to happen with Boston and Toronto. Again, not looking too far ahead past this game today, but, then also Vladdy was also interested in saying, but, we have the belief we're here to try to win the Stanley Cup, but there's a lot of hockey to play as well. So from that standpoint, I mean, they understand where they are. They understand those types of questions are going to start percolating more and coming more into the conversations that they have with reporters and media members. But at the same time, they're not hiding from it. But yeah, that's exactly what you're after here. And if you start to look around and feel like you can be part of that conversation, why wouldn't you? Especially when you're challenging for first place overall in the National Hockey League, which I will say this. I'm not so sure that the Winnipeg Jets want to be President's Trophy winners. That doesn't, it's kind of like being on the cover of SI, which I guess we're not going to have anymore. From that standpoint, I think if you finish second by 1 point behind the President's Trophy winners, you'd be probably a little more satisfied with your chances in the playoffs, because there's not a lot of symmetry between being the President's Trophy winners and winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, there's been exceptions, there's been aberrations, but consistently it hasn't happened for that team that is first overall at the end of 82 games.
By the way, Paulie, I don't care that Sports Illustrated is going under, because I still have my Martha Stewart issue, so I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Ezra. Is there any way we can cut his mic again? I think we might be all better off if that happens. Paul Edmonds is going to have the call of the Jets and the Senators later this afternoon. Unfortunately, Paul, we ran out of time to ask you about the pros and cons about being on the road with Mitchell versus Jamie, but maybe that'll be next time.
Absolutely.
The show.
Yeah. Okay.
Less snoring, right, Paulie?
Yeah, we'll
say that again
on that one.
Yeah, well, rain check on that one. Exactly right. Paul, thanks very much. Great catching up with you as always. Have a great call this afternoon. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure. Anytime, guys.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Paul.
There he goes. Paul Edmonds joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We go to break, and when we come back, more Jets talk. Colby Cohen from Daily Faceoff going to join us at the bottom of hour number 2. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, and the mercifully working Ezra Ginsburg here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now, even though we're about 8 minutes past the start of the second hour. That's okay. Details. Here's a detail you want to keep track of. This coming Wednesday, January 24th, Illegal Curve live at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. Come join us. Watch the Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs, followed by a live edition of the Illegal Curve post-game show. Drink specials, food specials, prizes galore. I'll be there. Dave will be there. Ezzy will be there. It's the Illegal Curve live on location watch party this coming Wednesday for the Jets and the Leafs from the center of the universe, that being Toronto, Ontario. So we hope to see you there on Wednesday evening.
But Winnipeg is the center of North America.
Yeah, well, the geographic center of North America. Yes, exactly.
Technically Winnipeg. It's actually closer to Steinbach.
It's halfway. There's a big sign. If you drive down Highway number 1 East, you can stop and stand underneath the sign if you so chose to do so. And if you did that today, you might freeze if you do so, but that's okay. That's your business and your business only. But it is always an entertaining contest when the Jets will head into Toronto to face the Leafs, just like it'll be an entertaining contest next Saturday when the Leafs will come to Winnipeg to face the Jets. I'm sure you guys saw the crowd in Edmonton earlier this week. Just as an aside,
Drew, actually, sorry to interrupt, but just quickly, I think actually made Winnipeg fans feel not so bad because they saw how invaded, I was going to call it Northlands Coliseum, but Rogers Center became over in Edmonton with so many Leafs fans. We know that Josh Mertens, shout out Josh Mertens from Michigan, is flying to Winnipeg. He's coming with one of his buddies to come watch. He's an Illegal Curve follower, so we'll give him a shout out.
I wonder if he knows Chuck Hellebuck, Dave.
I don't know if he knows Chuck Hellebuck, but I know he's familiar with Wyatt Bongiovanni, and I believe his friend who's coming with him is connected to the Bongiovannis. So he will be in town next weekend. So shout out to Josh, who's making his first trip to Winnipeg. He DM'd me, said he's got his Adam Lowry jersey. He's ready to go. So if you see
that's
Josh and his buddy around, make sure you give him a nice Winnipeg welcome.
That's great. Looking at congratulations to Josh getting here to watch.
Josh brought his long underwear, boys.
No, it's gonna be nice next week, Ezzy. It's +3.
Oh, beautiful. We're bringing even the nice weather in.
+3? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Nice. El Nino's back.
Yeah, and
actually, I saw him yesterday. He never went anywhere.
I was going to say,
amazing.
He's playing third line wing for the Jets right now, or second line wing, depending on if you want to look at the ice time sort of concept. Anyways, let's focus a little bit more on this afternoon's contest between the Jets and the Ottawa Senators. Look, the Senators the organization is certainly taking a step back from where they expected to be. We know that there's disappointment. We know that the offseason moves haven't worked out. Eunice Korpisalo as their savior in goal has not been what they had hoped it would be. I think they may have been fooling themselves a little bit in giving out that contract, but neither here nor there with that. The Jets, as I mentioned to Paulie, look, Ottawa can score. We know that. We've seen the numbers. We can see that they can put the puck in the net. Their shortcomings, of course, are on the defense. So it's going to be essential for the Jets to not play into Ottawa's hand, which means not play a run and gun style against Ottawa, because that's what the Senators want you to do. They want your defensive structure to break down, especially when their top of their lineup is out there, because they can take advantage of that with the goal scorers that they have. The bottom of their lineup, it's weak. There's no sugarcoating that. Their bottom six forwards are weak, and the Jets should be able to take advantage of it. But for the Jets, victory today starts with maintaining their structure throughout the course of this game, I would say.
Not throwing you under the bus here, Drew, but it's actually a fallacy about their bottom six being weak. I put together a little bit of a stat pack here. I mentioned during the interview with Paulie that the Senators average 3.4 goals a game, which is 9th in the NHL. The Senators have 5 or more players that have 10 goals. So those players are Claude Giroux, Brady Tkachuk, Drake Batherson, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Josh Norris. Dominic Kubalik has 9 goals, and Tim Stützle has 8 goals. So they've actually they're not just a top-heavy team. The other thing I wanted to throw out...
Ezzy, I mean, let me push back. I mean, your stats are good, and I appreciate you doing that research and everything. But when the Jets are game planning for today's game, they're game planning against Tim Stützle. They're game planning against Brady Tkachuk. They're not game planning against Dominic Kubalik, who's playing a fourth-line role for Ottawa. They're not game planning for Zach McEwen at the bottom of their lineup. The Jets are looking at that matchup at the bottom of the lineup and saying, this is an area that we should be able to maybe expose a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that they're not top heavy. You said the bottom six is, I think you said the bottom six is bad. I'm just saying that they're actually getting goals. They have three good scoring lines. All I'm saying is, like, it's not a Chicago Blackhawks situation, or, throw out another team that's top heavy, the Anaheim Ducks or something like that. All I'm saying is they're not depending on 2 or 3 players to get their goals. They're getting goals from a variety of sources. That's why they're going to soon have 7 guys that have 10 or more goals. And that's right up there, with some of the best teams in terms of having a bunch of good goal scorers, right? The other thing I wanted to mention too is the Ottawa Senators, as opposed to being a pretty good offensive team, they're one of the poorest defensive teams. They're actually, I think, 4th worst in the league, and their penalty kill is 30th. And the other thing with not only having a poor penalty kill is the Senators actually take, hold on, I think they're the most penalized team in the league. Hold on. 2nd most penalized team in the league. They average 12.5 penalties per game, whereas the Jets average 8.5 minutes. So they average
6 at least.
4 more minutes. Exactly. So all I wanted to bring up with that is that the Jets, if they do get a power play, and they'll probably get 3 or 4 based on this, they're facing one of the worst penalty kills in the league. The other thing too is that I thought was notable. Paulie mentioned the Senators haven't lost any games in overtime or in the shootout. The Senators actually have a winning record at home. So they're 12-11 at home.
Yeah.
They've actually only won 4 games on the road. So again, I think the Jets will win this afternoon. I'm not putting this all out there because I'm a Senators fan or a Senators defender. All I'm saying is
lunch?
Don't necessarily expect the Jets to win this game 7-1. And because I said that, they probably will win 7-1. But all I'm saying is the Ottawa Senators have a lot of goal-scoring threats beyond Brady Tkachuk and beyond Tim Stützle.
Which goes back
they're actually a pretty decent team that obviously should be a lot higher in the standings. nobody thought the Senators would be last in the East. Just nobody thought that was going to happen. People thought the Sens, might be competing for a wild card spot at this point in the season. So all I'm saying is the Jets, they'll probably get some power play goals today, and the Senators expect, different sources to get their goals.
Well, I mean, and I think to my point, and thank you for pushing back on me, Ezzy. That was good. But to my point, Dave, that's why the structure for the Jets is going to be so essential in today's game, because Ottawa does have, some players who can put the puck in the net, and we know who their offensively skilled players are. Starting with Stützle and Tkachuk and those guys that whose names immediately come to mind. But that's why it's so essential for the Jets, and they've been very good at this really for the entirety of the year, is to just keep their attention to detail, make sure that the middle of the ice is a no-go zone, and then they have the structure and they have the mindset where I think they should be able to take advantage of a fragile Ottawa team. This would be another one of those games where an early Jets goal, I think, would go a long way.
Yeah, and I think it's crazy to think we've already been doing the show for an hour and 15 minutes. We haven't mentioned that Mark Scheifele won't be playing in today's game. We should probably have mentioned that at the beginning of the show. I forgot to mention it. Sorry for that. Rick Bowness confirmed yesterday that not only is Mark Scheifele not playing, but he will be on the road trip, but he's not skating and not working out. So he's receiving treatment. Yeah. And again, like I said, it's funny how we were all, when this happened, in that game not last Thursday, but the Thursday prior to last. And, everyone was thinking, well, is this going to be significant? Is this going to be significant? And we thought it was going to be. And then Rick Bowness the next day said, well, we're expecting it to be a day-to-day thing. Well, day-to-day with this organization always tends to be a little longer than day-to-day.
Well, Dave, it also sounds like there's a good chance he won't play any of the games on the road trip. He's with the team,
right?
But he hasn't skated, right? I think it was Mikey McIntyre that asked him that. You were there.
He did, yeah.
But I'm just saying, again, I hope Scheifele plays against Boston. I hope he plays against Toronto. I'm just saying that the way things are trending, it's a possibility that he's not going to play any of these games on the road trip.
No, and I my suspicion, it was interesting because Rick said, well, he'll be reevaluated on Monday, but he will be on the road trip. But I was thinking, well, that's interesting because they do have a practice scheduled for tomorrow in Boston, where we'll see if Mark Scheifele skates. Ken Wiebe is on the trip for the Winnipeg Free Press, so Kenny will have that call, that piece of information. But again, so I think it's important to just put that out there that Mark Scheifele is not playing in today's game. Mm-hmm. He could potentially play on Monday,
and he hasn't skated. I really think that's significant, right?
No,
because
I do.
If he skates tomorrow, obviously, then there's a chance that he plays on Monday. But again, guys, I hate, I don't want people to get upset watching live or listening to the podcast. I hope he plays. I want to make that clear. I'm hopeful that he plays, like all Jets fans are. I'm just saying, if he hasn't skated in a week, right? Because it's been about a week since he skated, right? I don't know if you can expect him to play on Monday against Boston when he hasn't even skated yet. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree. I agree with you. And like I said, that's what my thinking is that my inclination is we'll see what happens tomorrow. So like I said, we'll be attuned. Stay tuned. We'll do a practice report. But ultimately, again, this team has shown, because Mark Scheifele, this will be the third game he's missed, that they can win when they miss Kyle Connor or Gabriel Velarde or Mark Scheifele. This team can still stick to the structure. So getting back to the point that Drew talked about, which is that consistency. And to me, what will be very interesting is, will this team kind of reward Rick Bowness's faith in giving them that time off? And like you said, they did a skills day with Dave Cameron on Thursday. It was not a hard skate by any stretch of the imagination, but ultimately, will this team, and they had a good practice yesterday, and again, they were all moving pretty good, but ultimately, will this team maintain that pressure? Will they be able to, their legs should be fresh, right? We were joking when we started the show, talking about how it's been a long time between games and the frequency. And again, that's something folks are going to have to get used to during this next stretch. And then we'll talk about it again in March.
Just wait till March.
I was going to say
16 games in 29 days.
I was going to say,
buckle up, Drew, buckle up.
Let me
I'm leaving town.
You're going to get more than, well, that's fine, Drew. Even when you leave town, you still do shows. So the fact is, March is going to be heavy. February, January and February, a little bit lighter, but March is going to be heavy. But ultimately, I think this team has shown consistently, they were a little disjointed. We talked about it. They played a good game against Columbus, against Chicago, even though they got the win late in that game. They just didn't look like they were clicking to the same degree. Philadelphia, they played an okay game. The third period was better. And even in the Islanders game, they played well to degrees, but it was looked like a team that had, a little bit of heavy legs.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, like I said, I think the last few days off will give them some time to get fresh. And ultimately, I think they'll reward the coach by sticking to that consistency. And we don't know who the goaltender is. Rick Bowness
that's what I was going to ask you guys. What do you think? So Rick Bowness yesterday, when asked about the goaltending lineup for the next 4 games, he said that Laurent Brossoit was going to get one of the games. Now, the question is, do you think this would be clearly based on the schedule, the easiest of the 4 before the break?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can't help but think about how good Connor Hellebuyck is in afternoon games, and he's been off since Tuesday as well. So do you think it's Laurent Brossoit, or do you think it's Connor Hellebuyck today? And then where do you see Brossoit getting a game if it's not today?
Yeah, it's going to be Brossoit or Hellebuyck, obviously, this afternoon.
way to go out there on a whoa. That's why you watch the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, folks, for that kind of analysis.
Well, Drew,
not just anybody can come up with that kind of analysis. It's a good thing he's got that working mic, because otherwise we would think about the genius we would have just missed out on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the village idiot for sure. No, but Drew, we talked about this after the game between the Jets and the Islanders on Tuesday night's post-game show. I thought that there was a good chance that Brossoit was going to play. You're right, though, Drew. I mean, you said Hellebuyck is good in afternoon games, which is true. He's also good in evening games, in morning games. He's good in the rain. He's good in blizzards. He's good on Tuesdays. He's good on Fridays. He doesn't really have many bad days or bad situations, right? I think there's a good chance it could be Brossoit. I'm going to put my reputation on the line, and obviously, that reputation is suspect.
Yeah, I was going to say. So you're putting nothing on the line.
Exactly.
Is what you're saying.
No, I'm going to say Brossoit, because I think, guys, we agree. I mean, the Bruins and the Leafs are clearly better teams than the Senators. It's not even close. So I think we agree that there's a good chance that Hellebuyck's going to play against the Bruins. Was Brossoit's last start against the Ducks, Dave? Was that his last start? It was either against the Ducks or the Sharks, I believe.
I believe so.
And he had something like 39 saves. Like, he was really good in that game.
Yeah, it was that game against the Ducks where he made like 37 saves.
Yeah, so I think it was, that's over a week ago. That's what, 10 days ago? Drew's looking it up here.
His last game that he played would have been, he played the game against Chicago. January 11th.
Oh, the 2-1 win.
Chicago.
Okay, so it's been 9 days.
Yeah, so he's due for a start.
So he's probably not going to play against Boston. So then is he going to play against Toronto? Like,
the way he's been playing,
I think it's going to be Brossoit today. I'm going with Brossoit. Final answer.
Okay, as he says, Brossoit. I mean, I tend to think it's going to be Hellebuyck, and I think that it might be Brossoit on Monday or Wednesday against.
So Dave, if it's Hellebuyck, I owe Drew a massage.
No,
and if it's Laurent Brossoit, you owe me an Illegal Curve sandwich. How about that? You don't want a massage?
I don't want a massage from you.
Yeah.
I would like a massage from a professional, trained, licensed expert in masseuse therapy.
Drew, you could have just said from anybody but Ezzy, and that would have been fine.
Actually, Naomi says that I give very good foot massages. I'm just saying.
God help us. Nobody needs to know that. That's great. That's the privacy of your own bedroom.
It's important, Drew, to give your significant other a foot massage every once in a while.
I have no quibbles with the concept. I have quibbles with listening to you talk about it. That's Drew,
Drew, I'd have gloves on, obviously.
You have gloves on when you massage your wife's feet?
No, he's talking about
no. I'm saying if I massage your feet, I would be wearing gloves.
You are not touching my body.
How about a back massage? A back massage.
You are not touching my body under any circumstances. I love you.
Oh, hold on, Drew. You don't have to worry.
Touching me under
you don't have to worry.
Circumstances.
Dylan Webb is going to take this one for the team, and he'll take the Ginsburg massage.
There you go. Congratulations, Dylan.
Do we have a massage therapist in the chat? How about this? If there's a massage therapist in the chat, or somebody knows a good massage therapist, I will buy. I'm so confident that Laurent Brossoit is going to start this afternoon.
Say me.
I will spend whatever it is, $100, and get you a massage if it's Hellebuyck and net. How about that, Drew?
Again, I can buy my own massages. I just don't think right now.
Dave, someone's doing well.
I can't get over the hurdle of you talking about massaging me right now. That's the breaking point for me at this point. Is that
hell of a show we got here?
I tell you what, I'd like to apologize to the almost 500 of you that are watching this and probably wondering what the hell you've walked into. Although you probably know what you walked into.
I will say a lot of people are in for the rub. Comet says I'm in for the rubs. So I mean, Ezzy, you got some people. If Drew is unwilling to accept it, you might be able to get a massage line going somewhere.
I mean, it seems like Drew is George Costanza right now, and he has a problem with a man massaging him. I've been massaged by other men, Drew.
I have been as well.
There's nothing wrong with that.
For the record, I have not.
My problem is
Dave
with
M, only
you,
female
Ezzy.
masseuses.
My problem is with you. I'd like to point that out for the record.
Yeah.
It is with the idea
All right,
of
move
you,
on, Drew. Come on.
an
You're the one.
untrained professional.
Okay, how about the
perpetuating this
loser
nonsense.
buys the winner an illegal curve sandwich from Bernstein's? How about that?
How about we just no? How about just
How about we
at all?
move the show along?
Well, that's what I was going. I mean, I'm
No,
trying
you're
to-
perpetuating it, Drew. Come on.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I will stop
Yeah.
perpetuating it. But that I agree wholeheartedly with really the idea that the Jets and their structure is going to be a key component of this afternoon's game, and the success that the Jets will require will come from maintaining that structure against an unstructured Ottawa Senators team. Let's keep going with our hockey talk on this Saturday morning. We're thrilled to welcome to the program from dailyfaceoff.com, Colby Cohen joins the show. Colby, a good afternoon and welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. How are you doing?
What's going on, guys? It's a good day. It's a Saturday. There's lots of hockey games on. The Australian Open's going. I don't know if any of you guys are tennis fans, but plenty of sports to watch. BU got a big win last night. Your guys' boy Rutger McGroarty looked great for Michigan last night. What a prospect he is. So yeah, lots to get into, I'm sure.
I don't want to tout myself too much, but I do have my tennis plaques up on the wall right behind here, Colby, from when I was a youth tennis player, and it does say winner on these, not just participants. So you're talking to when it came to the under 12 Winnipeg tennis scene. That's where I was a Viking. But
Colby, Drew models this game after Andy Roddick. He's like Winnipeg's Andy Roddick.
I bet you there's not a lot of outdoor tennis happening in Winnipeg, though. You're probably not getting a lot of days right this time of year. Like we get I'm outside of Philadelphia. Every now and again, we get 55 degrees, and you see people out on the tennis court in long sleeves, just like you do on the golf course. But as I remember when Paul Stasny, who's a good friend, was playing in Winnipeg, he put those Roger Federer shoes away once, October rolled around, and those babies stayed in his closet until let's say May.
Yeah, there's very little tennis happening outdoors. You're absolutely right about that. Clay courts, grass courts, snow courts haven't become a thing yet in tennis, but any day now, I'm sure. Obviously, Colby, we brought you on to talk about the Jets and the hockey world in general. You've been doing some great work with our friends at Daily Faceoff, and our good friend Frank, of course, driving the bus there. So congratulations on your work there as of late. Given that we're based here in Winnipeg and the Jets are in lofty airs towards the top of the NHL standings, we're always curious from an outsider's perspective. You've been in plenty of dressing rooms. When you see a team undergo a huge transformation in their style of play, from being sort of defensively, having defensive shortcomings to being a defensive juggernaut, what does that say to you as a former player in how they're sort of adapting on the fly to a new style?
I think it says everything to do with coaching and leadership, because I think all these players in the NHL can defend. Defending, playing discipline, and playing within structure is the only part of hockey that is actually things you can draw up. Okay, the rest of hockey is free flowing decision making, but as far as playing in a structure and playing disciplined, that to me that starts with your leaders. As cliche as it may sound, but it's not bullshit, guys. I mean, look, there's a new captain in Winnipeg, and if you don't think, at least from my point of view as an outsider, that has a lot to do with what's going on. And, I've been between the benches the last couple of years for the Chicago Blackhawks doing their broadcasts. And so I get to see Winnipeg, frequently. And, Adam Lowry, to me, is such a catalyst for why they're having success. And take the offense out of it, because I'm not even talking about anything that he ever does with, the offensive zone. I'm talking about just holding his teammates accountable to be disciplined with the puck, having guys not cheat, not try to make that extra move, not try to be a little bit selfish for that extra bit of offense, and really buy into what the coaching staff and the leadership group is holding guys accountable to. So, I know you guys were talking a little bit about structure and defense before I came on the show. Mm-hmm. Again, it just comes down
Hopefully
to
you didn't catch that part about the massages, by the way, Colby.
I did not. No, I didn't. But it just, to me, it's just a willingness. Every team in the NHL could defend well. And it's not just defensemen. It's forwards, it's goaltending. That's why the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to continue to be what they are, because they refuse to play with that level of discipline that it takes to win when games really get, the notch gets turned up for games. And I think it's one of the reasons the Flyers have been successful this year, because they don't have anywhere near the talent teams like Winnipeg or Vancouver or any of the top end teams. But I think they play more discipline than anybody else in the NHL. And I think that starts with their coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Colby, I wanted to just switch to the Philadelphia Flyers, because you're from Villanova. And I believe I heard on Morning Cuppa, and you guys do a great job. Johnny Lazarus, got to give you a plug. I was listening, the most recent show I listened to was the whole Cutter Gauthier situation. And I want to ask you about that, because I do think, it relates to the Jets. And, there's a lot of things going on there, obviously. But, I heard you going off a little bit about Cutter Gauthier. And we actually had Anthony Sanfilippo on the show last weekend. But you, of course, played for Boston University, one of the top programs in NCAA. You've got Macklin Celebrini, Lane Hudson there this year. Obviously, Cutter Gauthier, Boston College, big rival and everything like that. But just going back to that whole situation, and the reason why I think it relates a little bit to the Jets, you mentioned Rutger McGroarty, who, of course, is playing for University of Michigan. People are now starting to, some people, not many, because we know Rutger wants to be here. But I guess, I know you've probably moved on and a lot of people want to move on, but just going back to that, I mean, what do you think other teams can learn from that? Because obviously, I agree with what was said. Cutter Gauthier wouldn't even talk to guys like John LeClaire and Patrick Sharp, who are in player development for the Flyers. It just seems like, and again, if you can mix, sorry, this is a long, ask Drew or Dave, I'm always long-winded here. Philly's 5-0 since that happened. And it's almost like the rest of the team said, F you, Cutter. We're going to go and we're going to go, try to challenge the Rangers for first in the Metro.
It does feel like it's galvanized the team and the fan base a little bit. And I think Philadelphia has always been like that. I mean, growing up, I was a Flyers fan. I'm not anymore. That I definitely lost that allegiance, probably around 17, 18 years old at the NHL draft. And it's never come back. So, but I am an Eagles fan. I like the Phillies. I support the other teams here in Philadelphia, because, the fan base runs on hate and spite. I mean, they showed up at Cutter Gauthier's game at Boston College the following weekend, which honestly, I liked that. To me, I respect that so much more than going on Twitter with a bullshit picture of someone else and chirping and ripping a teenager. Okay. So I like the fact that they actually did that and they showed up at that game and they heckled them. But look, I'll be honest with you. I think I even said on my show, and we had Rutger on. I'm such a big Rutger McGroarty fan. Is there something these teams can learn from it? I'm not really sure there is. And the only reason I would say that is because, most kids are just so thrilled to be drafted into the NHL and are just, it doesn't matter what the jersey is. You might get a chance at some point to go pick your team, play for your team. Most hockey players are just not wired that way. I mean, maybe kids nowadays are a little bit different. They're a little bit more ballsy. They're a little bit more unafraid to, use their voice. But, at the end of the day, and I said this on Morning Cup of Hockey, and we talked about this, and we had Frank on, and I've talked to Scott Hartnell, and I know all the players involved. Like, I know Sharpie from Chicago, and John LeClaire was my favorite player growing up. So there's just a million points of connections here. But what he did didn't bother me, because at the end of the day, he had leverage and he exercised it. And, I got to tell you, teams exercise their leverage every single day of the week. Okay. Whether you're a player, whether you're a broadcaster, whether you're a coach, a manager, at the end of the day, nobody, the team does what they want. And so I'm not upset at Cutter Gauthier for telling the Flyers, sorry, I'm not coming there. For whatever the reason is, he had the leverage to do it. He did it. What upsets me and what I found to be troubling about this guy is how he did it. The disrespect that he showed to the individual parties and the organization and the fan base. That's where I had a problem with it. Okay. We've seen players leave for different situations. Jacob Trouba, he left Winnipeg. He had a family situation. His wife wanted to practice medicine. I'm sure you guys know the story better than I do. Okay. Disappointing? Absolutely. Right. But at the end of the day, these are human beings. Right. And that's where I kind of drew the line with the whole situation, is that I don't have a problem with a player using their leverage. What I have a problem with is how you handled it. And, I know Rutger McGroarty since he's a little kid. I played for his father. And let me just tell you, that he's a hockey player. Yeah. Like, I don't think it would matter if the game was in the middle of the Arctic tundra, or if it was in the middle of the desert somewhere, God knows where. That kid, once he straps up, he's coming. He is like going to punch you in the face. He's going to run you over, and then he's going to score a goal, and then he might take your girlfriend. Like, that's the kind of kid, the kind of hockey player he is. He's old school. Right. So, I said on social media that's the future captain of the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, absolutely. I have no idea if he ends up there, but I mean, you watch the way he plays at Michigan. When he's going, he drags that entire team along, and there's other skilled players around him, but that's just who he is. That's his personality. He's a leader. He's a coach's kid. He eats, sleeps, breathes the game of hockey. And I'm not sure kids nowadays do that. I just don't. I think there's so much other shit going on. I sometimes wonder what the commitment level is for all these guys. I don't wonder with him, so I think the Canadian market will love that kid. Like Brady Tkachuk has become a beloved captain in Canada as an American player. Like Austin Matthews has become a beloved player in Canada as an American. Quinn Hughes. I mean, go down the list. And so, but I know, and I'm giving you a long answer, but I don't know if there's a way around this at this point, because we do know one thing about hockey, guys. It's a copycat league. Once someone does it, once a team does something, once a play, other guys go, if he did it, then I think I could do it too.
By the way, Colby, can you come on every single week and talk about Rutger McGroarty? Because I think Jets fans would absolutely love that.
Yeah, well, I see him play. I watch a lot of Michigan, and I watch a lot of college hockey. On the weekends, I kind of dial back the NHL on the weekend and really focus on college hockey. I love watching BU for obvious reasons. Very, very connected to the team, the coaching staff, and the program, but. Like last night, I was flipping back and forth between BU and Michigan, because Michigan State is an incredible rivalry. Michigan State has been the better team all season. Michigan really needed some wins this weekend against them to really get themselves back high up the pairwise, to put themselves in a good spot here for the push. And they shit kicked them. And it started with a Rutger McGroarty goal and a bunch of points. I mean, he's a force.
Colby Cohen, our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You can listen to Colby every morning, Monday to Friday, on Morning Cup of Hockey, on dailyfaceoff.com and the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel.
Colby, I can tell you this. Jets fans have never been this excited to watch Michigan games since the 15-16 season, when they were watching Kyle Connor just absolutely destroy things with the CCM line. So
that was a great line, wasn't it?
Oh, man. I'm going to tell you, because I watched all those games because there was a lot of excitement when the Jets drafted Kyle Connor, and watching those games at Michigan. I mean, how he didn't win the Hobie Baker, I still don't understand, because he was, and I can't attest to watching a lot of college hockey, but I watched him and he was absolutely unbelievable.
Well, I can tell you this because I'm on the committee for the Hobie Baker. Yes, we vote, but there isn't a structure. Like, the Hobie Baker is, there's no quote unquote criteria. So it's really it's loose, right? Yeah. And it's a very diverse group of people, between hockey people, media people. It's kind of an interesting thing. This is my third year, and will actually be my final year on that committee. After doing it for a couple of years, it just was kind of, felt like it was time to not be a part of that anymore. But I agree with you, because I remember that season. I remember doing their NCAA tournament game against North Dakota that year. It was actually like maybe the first time I was ever in the booth was that NCAA tournament. I'd really never done TV before, and I kind of got thrown in. And I remember that line in the NCAA tournament. We were in the Cincinnati regional that year, and those guys were special players. So, it's a good time if you're a Winnipeg Jet fan to watch the Michigan Wolverines. And don't be surprised with, the way college hockey is now, moving into this whole NIL where players are making money and this and that. Like, more and more, I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more, Canadian players go the NCAA route. I really do. I think the CHL, has gotten so stringent, and they've got all those rules about guys going and playing in the American League too young. And, like they need to figure that out, because I think there's a world where the CHL and the NCAA can all kind of coexist at one. But in my opinion, the pendulum is swinging a little bit into the NCAA's purview right now, because $50 a week or whatever these OHL kids make, or WHL or whatever. I know you guys have a WHL team, right?
Not anymore. They just moved.
They just moved.
We have the Brandon Wheat Kings in Manitoba, but yeah, the Winnipeg Ice left. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I knew there was one at one point. I knew the American. Obviously, I played in the building as an American League player. Back. Geez, I don't know how long that was again now, but it's a great time to watch college hockey. Like, it really is, and the games are really available everywhere. More and more, I see TSN all over Canada picking up games that I'm doing with ESPN or ESPN Plus or whomever. So.
Well, I was just going to quickly say, you look at Max Celebrini, right? We mentioned him, Boston University. Owen Power, also Canadian. To your point, we're talking about the first overall pick. Well, Celebrini is supposed to be the first overall pick. But further to your point, right, Colby? Like, Canadians, there's a reason why Canadians are choosing to go the NCAA route, right?
You just get more time. It's less of a rushed process. And right now, I think there's this sort of premium on American-born goaltenders right now in the game of hockey. Okay, the pendulum has kind of swung in their favor. And we were talking to Andrew Raycroft about this, who's a Canadian guy. He's from, he played in Wellington, Ontario, and then he made his way through the ranks. And, he actually now does a lot of college hockey. So this is a guy who really has seen both, came through one, but as sort of a, an analyst now, he's seeing the other side of it. And like Connor Hellebuck, nobody rushed Connor Hellebuck. He didn't even come to NHL training camps because you legally can't. Right. And so you think about those extra years these goaltenders are getting, these defensemen. You look at the Hughes brothers, they all stayed that second year. They all came out as 20-year-olds. Like, what would have happened if Luke and Quinn Hughes at 19 were still playing in Major Junior? They probably would have had 150 points, and they probably would have got a lot of bad habits in their game, where staying at Michigan forces these guys to play against 24, sometimes 25-year-old guys, okay? And it forces you, to keep a little bit of that discipline in your game. And again, I'm biased. I went the college route. I cover the game. I do the NCAA tournament. I call the national championship. So I get it. I have bias, but I'm just seeing general managers that feel more comfortable and less rush with their prospects by letting them go to college and letting them kind of, bake in the NCAA route.
Well, and Colby, we have a perfect example of that here in Winnipeg, right? You have Chaz Lucius, the 2021 first rounder, who played the 1 year at Minnesota and then came and turned pro. And then, of course, he's dealt with injuries. So that's an unfortunate situation for him. But I just want to ask you about Rutger a little bit, because you are right. He is already a fan favorite. He was here for the development camp this summer, and him and Colby Barlow, the 2023 first rounder, they became like stepbrothers. Like, it was actually hilarious watching them kind of take over and really become like charismatic and own this city very quickly. But for a guy like Rutger, do you see him staying longer at Michigan, or do you think this could, and obviously I'm not asking you to reveal anything if you know.
Yeah, no, I don't know the answer, but I'll tell you my opinion. No problem.
Yeah. And that's what I'm curious about, your opinion, just in terms of the benefits of, because again, we've seen it with guys. Kyle Connor was a one and done. Jacob Trouba stayed the 2 years. And obviously there's always that concern, right? And especially like you said, now there's more so. It's like, well, if a guy stays a third year, is he going to stay a fourth? And right. That sort of thing. So in terms of Rutger, what do you see his sort of route being with turning pro?
Yeah, so I remember talking a lot with his father his freshman year, and I just kept saying, don't rush him. Don't rush him. I see some of these other kids at Michigan are in a rush. Don't buy it in, okay? You don't make your money on your first contract. Okay. Your money comes when on your second contract. The last thing you want to do is leave Michigan to go play in the American Hockey League when you have things left on the table at that level. Now, fast forward, obviously. Now I watch Rutger play at Michigan, and I think that's a guy who looks like he's ready to be a pro. So, I think he absolutely made the right decision to come back for his second year. Now I think it's going to be up to him. I really do. And obviously the team and his family. I know his family's super tight-knit. They make decisions together. They're always together. Both of his parents, his sister, they're such a great supportive cast for him. But I look at his game and I do believe he's ready to take the next step. I really do. He's not a guy who worries me because let's just say he does take the step and he starts, in the American Hockey League next year. That kid is going to will his way through that American League roster, will his way through that American League depth chart. Like, he's not a guy that I worry about having to go deal with the bus rides and play the 3-and-3s. And I know that stuff is a little outdated in the American League. I know the 3-and-3s aren't happening as much anymore.
Still do them.
They do, but not every weekend like we did. I mean, we did one every single weekend other than we flew up to either Newfoundland or Winnipeg to play 2 games in one of those cities.
Mm-hmm.
But he looks to me like a guy who's ready to go. But he also, guys, is a guy who feels like an unfinished business type of guy. And if he feels that his team underachieves this year or potentially is going to be the captain at Michigan next season, which I could very well see happening, which is an incredible honor and hard thing to do at college hockey, to have an underclassman in a sport that has older teams. He could be a 20-year-old captain with 25-year-old seniors, right? Role types of players. So he may be a guy who says, I want to be captain and I want to win at Michigan. And let me tell you, that is the farthest thing from a red flag. Okay. That is a breath of fresh air, a guy who wants to win. He's not worried about his own stats. And that's what you get with him. Like he's never going to care about his stats, this kid. He's going to care about team winning. You look at the World Juniors, you look what he went through. He was not healthy, especially, the early parts of the tournament. He lays that hit in that gold medal game, which to me just changed the entire tone of that hockey game, brought such a level of confidence to his team. Like who are these punks? They got nothing on us. And again, that's just who he is as a player. So is he ready? Yeah, I think he's ready, guys. Dave, I think he could potentially challenge for an NHL roster spot next year, but is it going to hurt him to play a third year? No. If he does go back for that third year, do you worry about him being a senior? Probably not, because at the end of the day, you're seeing what Cutter Gauthier did. I think other players could do the same thing if they truly wanted to. But to me, he's the type of kid who's ready. He's a pro. He plays like a pro when you watch him, sort of with his attitude and his skill set on the ice.
Well, Colby, I'll tell you this. If he ends up in the American Hockey League with the Moose, I'll be excited because I cover them extensively. So that'll be a little fun guy to cover next year. No question about it.
Last question I have for you, Colby, is about, you mentioned you played for Rutgers' dad, Jim, with the Lincoln Stars of the USHL. What was, as a coach, what was Jim's focus and, and sort of entity that you think was translated down to Rutger?
Well, details, and all the qualities that I kind of went through earlier when I was talking, and I know I was kind of saying it with a little bit of humor, but I truly meant it, that I'll punch you in the face on my way to scoring a goal. And I think Jim, Jimmy deserves a lot of credit because this kid is an old school hockey player. I think he's the type of player we all kind of crave, right? He's that power forward who, takes no prisoners, who, goes and stands in front of the net and will take an absolute, shit kicking while trying to score a goal. He's the player that, drags teams into the fight on a game where they're not ready to play or they're not, there with their A game. And I think a lot of that comes from Jimmy. He was the assistant coach in Lincoln when I was there. And I remember, the following year he became the head coach, or maybe, I believe it was the following year Jimmy became the head coach. And I remember my friend Jimmy Hayes, who we all know, it's a terribly tragic thing that happened to Jimmy, but Jimmy was playing at the U.S. national team, but he was too young to go to college hockey. He still needed another year of high school, and he didn't know where he should go. And I remember getting on the phone with Jimmy and selling Jim McGroarty. And I know we're talking about two guys with the name of Jim now, but I sold Jimmy Hayes on Jim McGroarty, on what kind of guy he was, what kind of coach he was. He was going to teach you how to play tough. He was going to hold you accountable. But he also, guys, he wasn't an asshole. He wasn't a prick. He was the type of player's coach that you respected and that you made the right plays for, because you didn't want to have to go look him in the eye if you made a hot dog type of decision or a hot dog type of play, because he treated you, even at a young age, with such respect. And I think a lot of that is worn off on Rutger. And when you ask Jimmy about it, he gives his wife all the credit and says he had nothing to do with it. It was all his wife, Cindy. But at the end of the day, like, he just has all the qualities that a captain should have. I watch the way Adam Lowry plays, and I know Rutger, has a lot more skill than Adam Lowry, but there's a lot of similarities, the way he kind of goes around and he patrols the ice and he looks after his teammates, and he, is the guy who stands up on the bench, and and he knows when to get into the refs, and he knows when to challenge, back on certain things. So I think some of those qualities, Drew, are what sets him apart and what makes him a natural leader. And look, I think we're going to get to see that as Michigan. I believe they're 12th in the pairwise rankings right now, but they're going to have to win some games to make sure that, they've got to buy into the tournament, and they don't need their conference tournament to get in. And then from there, it's going to fall on, Rutger and some of those other players. But, Rutger drags guys like Frank Nazar, who's another first-round pick. He drags him into the game, right? Seamus Casey and some of the other big names. And he kind of, stirs up that drink. So I think a lot of those are why we always love a coach's kid. There's always a thing about a coach's kid. Look at Adam Lowry. He's a coach's kid, right? There's a certain type of guy that's a coach's kid. We've seen it time and time again. And I think Rutger, hits the nail on all those things.
Absolutely. And Colby, just one last question for you. And it's non-NHL related. Like, you can look at our names. We're all members of the tribe, which means we're Jewish, of course. Colby knows that. But just for those who might not know what that reference means. And I wanted to ask you about the whole situation with the Israeli national team. And obviously, we're not going to get into geopolitics or anything like that, because obviously, we all agree that war is awful and we don't want anybody to lose their life in any type of armed conflict. But specifically asking you about the decision of the IIHF to ban Israel, and then obviously the NHL getting behind Israel, and then the IIHF reversing their decision, right? It also helps that Gary Bettman happens to be Jewish, right? Well, but I don't think it's just that. But I guess, what is your take on that whole situation? Because obviously, we should mention there's a Division III World Under-20 Championship coming up in Bulgaria. So that's what Team Israel was being banned for participating in. Now they can participate in that tournament. So just what was kind of your overall take on that? It's a scary time we live in right now. There's a lot of anti-Semitism, and you've been a really, I think, strong voice for the Jewish community. So I commend you for that.
Well, first off, I appreciate that. And, now that my paychecks don't come from a team, I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind. And I'm an opinionated person. I own that. They're my opinions. Everybody is entitled to their opinions, even opinions I don't agree with. I think, hey, that's totally fine with me. You have your opinions. And, I've got, this hanging behind me, which I'm sure is something that you guys, recognize what that is. Obviously says, bring them home. I think we all know what that means and what that's about. But, as regards to the Israeli national team, I think the IIHF made a very short-sighted decision. I think they were facing pressure from some outside sources. And, I know we don't want to get into a political talk, but I think a lot of it had to do with politics and pressure. And I just thought it was the wrong decision. I think it sent the wrong message. I think in a lot of these conflicts that we're seeing around the globe, I think we have to remember that, most people are like us. We don't want to have wars. We don't want to see people getting injured. Doesn't matter. Even if you don't agree with them, you don't like them, you don't want to see innocent people injured. And I think, athletes unfortunately get dragged into these things, and players are not allowed to represent their countries if international federations feel like their countries are doing the wrong things. And, you could really go around and pull athletes in every sport. Nobody wants to see bad things happening anywhere. And so I think the decision was short-sighted. I think it sent the wrong message. I think it supported the wrong message. A lot of what we're seeing with the anti-Semitism around the US, Canada, around the world. I mean, guys, my DMs are filled with death threats, with people saying things to me that keyboard warriors left and right. I mean, it's so disgusting just because I'm voicing my opinion. And again, everybody gets to have theirs. Now, I will commend the NHL, USA Hockey, the DEL, all of these bodies that stood up. And look, I know Gary Bettman's not going to take credit for something like this. And it's actually, he's completely kept his name out of this whole thing. Bill Daley was the one who did all the speaking, but the NHL had a lot to do with flipping this ban. And USA Hockey as well did a lot to help flip this ban. Pat Kelleher and his team out in Colorado Springs, who's the executive director of USA Hockey. I mean, when they saw this thing, they were all like, couldn't believe what they were seeing. Leagues in Germany, the head of that league stood out and said something. So I think they did the right thing. They had the influence. They made the IIHF realize that how much of a bad decision this was. They changed their decision. They're going to get to play as they should get to play. And, I think, look, again, short-sighted decision. I was pretty harsh on the IIHF. The IIHF does a lot of things that, bother me. I don't think it's a well-run organization. I think they've got a lot of problems in the way that they do their tournaments, the way they award their tournaments. The reffing in their tournaments is bad. The way some of the matchups, the way some of the, other levels are treated, whether it's the women's, world's issues and this, and like, I just think they make a lot of bad decisions at the IIHF. And I think there's bad leadership at the top of that group. I think the guy's name is Luke Tardif or something like that. I think he needs to go because again, it's always an issue when the IIHF is involved. So happy to see this decision reversed. I've been in pretty close contact with people, at the Israeli ice hockey, league at the top, people who kind of represent them in various roles. We've had a lot of conversations and I've really done everything that I could do behind the scenes to kind of represent. And I know I have a Team Israel jersey that's being sent to me, which is super cool. They were asking me if I wanted the blue or the white. I said, guys, I'm not picky. I'll take whatever. And I will rock that thing proudly.
Awesome.
I've got my Team Israel tape on the bottom of my stick right now, which is really cool. Something someone on Twitter was doing, and I've handed it out to, a bunch of other Jewish hockey players. So, I'm super proud of who I am and where I come from and where my family's, roots and origins are. And I will continue to support and advocate and really stick up for everybody, because I know a lot of people are in a tough situation where they're afraid to speak their mind because of the way cancel culture works. And, for me, I just don't care. I really don't. I'm going to say how I feel. I'm going to be genuine about it. I'm open to hear other people's opinions on why I could potentially be wrong. I'm always trying to learn more about certain situations. So, I just don't have anything to hide, and I'm going to continue to be that way and advocate for the things that I feel strongly about.
Colby
You're a
Cohen.
mensch, Colby. You're a mensch.
Colby,
it,
thank you for this. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for your insight. A great appearance here on the show, and we'll do it again real soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And hey, you guys could be watching hockey into June this year. I think you guys have quite an exciting opportunity. You got the best goaltender in the NHL. I would love to see Rick Bowness, add that one to the case, because man, there's not many people that are easy to root for than Rick Bowness. He's a mensch, if we're going to use that word. He's a great human being. And so, pulling for him, and we'll see what happens this year, guys.
Thanks, you, Colby. We'll do it again real soon. There he goes, Colby Cohen, joining us this morning. Morning Cup of Hockey on the dailyfaceoff.com and the YouTube channel. We're into overtime. We'll take one final break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Jets and the Sens, and we'll wrap this morning's show before the post-game show later this afternoon. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
So you're a pizza person. You married a wing person. But somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Big thanks to Colby Cohen for joining us. Big thanks to Paul Edmonds for joining us earlier on the show. In case you missed either of those interviews, the podcast will be up shortly. And of course, the instant replay available on our YouTube channel. According to Ken Wiebe, as part of the warm-up game day newsletter that the Free Press distributes, the expected goalie duel for tonight, or this afternoon rather, Connor Hellebuck versus Eunice Korpisalo.
So it looks like Drew's getting a massage.
Yeah, God help me. There's no. In any event, we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition in about 3 hours' time.
Maybe
But
Lawrence Swab plays one of those games against the Leafs then? I mean, it has to be, unless he plays against Boston.
It would be one or the other, you would presume. So we will find out more about that a little bit later on this afternoon. IllegalCurve.com will have all the latest. And of course, Dave and I will be back later this afternoon for the Illegal Curve post-game show right around 4:45 or so, somewhere around that after the Jets and the Ottawa Senators. So be sure to join us back here for that after this afternoon's contest. Want to say a big thank you to all of the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the post-game show, the Saturday show, and the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Grid Park, where you can use code Illegal Curve to park for free, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and of course Farmery Beer, number 2 Donald Street. Get over there, get yourself some Illegal Curve lager, also available on all of your favorite delivery apps. These fine companies support Illegal Curve hockey, so as a result, you should support them. A lot of Moose news and notes. We'll do a Minuk Moose Minute on the post-game show later on.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Oh, my arms are crossed right now, so that was not me who pressed that button.
Outvoted.
No, I wasn't. Okay, if you're going to do this, I'm going to go because I have to be somewhere. It's now 11:05. So are you doing the Moose Minute now, or are you going to do it this afternoon on the post game?
Oh, Drew, you can go get your pedicure now.
Bye.
Really? You're leaving? And he's gone. All right. Well, we've lost Drew Mindell, but that's okay because we've got Dave Minuk and Ezra Ginsburg, and we're taking this into overtime. Folks will appreciate that, but Drew doesn't appreciate it. But the folks, hold on, Drew's back. Why is he Drew back? I thought Drew was leaving. Ezzy, did you bring Drew back? Stop bringing Drew back. Don't bring Drew back. Anyways, look, quickly, we'll get into the Minuk Moose Minute, which apparently, Frosty saying I pulled a Marvel post-credit scene. Frosty, it wasn't me. This was a Drew. This was an escapade.
Hold on, Dave. We did just talk about it and we planned this. So I mean, you did. You
That
were
is true.
aware that I was going to do this.
I did know that you were going to do it.
Dave, the reality is, do we really need Mindell for the Moose Minuk Minute? I mean, I think it's better if he leaves. Let Drew go get on with his Saturday morning.
That's fine. You and I will. Hey, look. The only reason why we want the show to be end relatively quickly is for the folks who want to download the podcast. We want them to be able to listen to it before the Jets and Senators get going at 2:00, which of course you'll be joining Drew and I for the postgame show. I'm sure he'll have some things to say on that show, but just to quickly get into it, the Moose, we're going into last night's game, having lost 7 straight. And of course, without Chaz Lucius, I'm still waiting to get an update. Head coach Mark Morrison told me that he had seen a specialist, just to give folks an update on the 2021 first rounder. He had seen a specialist. He didn't specifically say it was about his ankle, but the week, January 3rd, he told me that he was dealing with an ankle issue. So I suspect it is the ankle with Chaz Lucius. So he will hopefully get an update maybe today or on Monday on him. And then, of course, Brad Lambert didn't play last night. He was a possibility, Mark Morrison told me, on Wednesday for playing this weekend on the Saturday game, being tonight. But Brad Lambert didn't practice with the team until yesterday. And when he did, he practiced in a yellow non-contact. So Brad Lambert not expected to play tonight, but you probably could see him Tuesday, Thursday when the Chicago Wolves are in town. I'll be doing color on the Tuesday night game. Of course, Wednesday I'll be at Boston Pizza, so I won't be able to be downtown watching that game. We'll have tickets to give away. I've given away all the tickets for tonight's game, of course. But we will have to talk about last night's game, Ezzy, because the Moose went into action against Grand Rapids, 11 straight games. Now, the Moose right now, as folks know, are a last place team in the Central, but they're not that far back that if they start to win a few games, they could get themselves into the mix. And they have the opportunity to make some of that hay with 11 straight games against their Central Division rivals. And starting with the Grand Rapids Griffins, we saw Michael Hutchinson. He was at Hockey for All Center walking around yesterday or the day before, I should say, and getting ready to practice with his Grand Rapids team.
He's got the long hair now, Michael Hutchinson.
He does. Looking a little bit like a Bond victim. But ultimately, the scoring was opened by Grand Rapids. But a minute later, Thomas Caron, he's a big, tough kid out of Quebec. He scores his first goal of the season. He has only played 5 games. He's been in the ECHL otherwise, but of course, with some injuries, he's getting an opportunity. And the Moose didn't start there, as he stopped there, I should say, because Nikita Chibrikov, a 2021 second rounder of the Jets, he scored his 11th goal. He actually took over the points lead for Brad Lambert. He has 26 now on the season. He scored a nice power play goal. Parker Ford set him up.
It was a nice play. It was. I don't know. Would you call it a snapshot?
Yeah.
It was a very nice shot, like top cheese, right? Like,
yeah.
And you know this, Dave, better than I do because you watch all the Moose games. Like,
yeah,
Chibrikov, he's got speed. He's got, and the thing you've talked a lot about is he's got a kind of tenacity to his game. He's not the biggest player, right? Because he's only about 5'10", 5'11",
something like that.
Chibrikov, but he's kind of got that. I don't know almost that Alexei Kovalev. Remember, like Kovalev had an edge to him. Obviously, was a great offensive player, but I just love that snapshot. Like Chibrikov's shot has really impressed me.
No, it is very good, Ezzy, and he's a good young prospect in the system, and so he scored his 11th goal of the season a few minutes after Thomas Caron tied the game, and they didn't stop there. CJ Cease, after a nice play by Jeffrey VL behind the net, forced Sebastian Costa to turn over the puck, and then VL put it in front, and CJC scored his 5th goal of the season. He was what was CJC says? He was a 2014 5th rounder, I think, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That sounds right. But we would have been at that draft in Philadelphia watching CJ get selected. but ultimately he scores to make it 3-1. So they score 3 goals in the opening period, and they look like they're in cruise control because right after killing a penalty to, I can't remember who it was to. I mean, I think it was to Simon Lundmark. But right after they killed the Simon Lundmark penalty, Jeff Malott showing some speed, scoring his 9th goal of the season. So now it's a 4-1 game for the Moose. And you're like, well, the Moose are in cruise control. Well, they have a bit of a hiccup. They give up a goal late in the, not late, but late-ish in the second period, make it a 4-2 game. And then early in the third period, Dominic Shine makes it 4-3. And you're like, okay, well, the Moose, they're going to lock it down. They're going to not make any mistakes they know how critical this win is, and a regulation win is, especially for Grand Rapids, who was the 4th place team in the Central. Well, unfortunately for the Moose, what did they do? They took another late penalty. Jeff Malott gets called for high sticking. So the Moose are in the penalty box when they give up a power play goal with 1 minute and 41 seconds to go in the third period, tie game. You're like, okay, well, it's going to overtime. They'll get a chance. And Kyle Capobianco almost scored a beauty. Ville Heinola had some chances.
Yeah.
But
it was a nice end-to-end rush by Capobianco. By the way, all of this is based on all the videos you've clipped and posted on IC Dave on Twitter, Dave. So, I mean, I was loving it because I felt like I was watching the whole game just based on what you were posting.
Well, that's why I try and do that. So people who don't get a chance to watch the games can feel like they have some sort of insight into what's happening with the AHL team of Manitoba. And it was a 4-all game going into overtime, and just a very unusual play where it looked like really the Moose were, had control, and then Grand Rapids was going for a line change, and there was just a kind of Marco Kasper takes a aggressive stance, goes right at Colin Delia, and there's 2 Moose players, and the 2 Moose players end up banging into Colin Delia, and it's called the puck looks like it goes in the net. It's initially ruled a no goal, but after a lengthy review, I think it was the second or third song at least, they did determine that the puck had crossed the line, so it was called a good goal, and the Moose lose 5-4 to Grand Rapids. So tough situation for the Moose to lose that game. Yeah, obviously they get a point, but one single point isn't good enough for this team right now. If they want to make the playoffs, and they may get the benefit of some guys, getting sent down, because again, if Mark Scheifele's back sooner rather than later, that's going to necessitate a move. So you expect like a guy like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby will be sent back down. And then
I think it will be him. I think originally you would think it would be Dom Toninato, Dave, but I think you're absolutely right that Jonsson-Fjällby makes the most sense. I mean, I guess there always is the chance that Gus Bus goes down, but it's hard to say, right? Like Gustafsson is just now back in a regular jersey, right?
Yeah, and Rick Bowness was asked about him, and he said he's not yet cleared to play by the team. So I mean, he'll remain on IR, even though he's in a regular uniform. But ultimately, like I said, it'll be interesting to see. But the Moose can definitely use those reinforcements. Ville Heinola, huge benefit to him being down with the Moose. Had an extensive conversation with him. If you didn't get a chance to see that, he has a really good attitude. Wants to be in the NHL, but he understands why he's in the AHL and what he needs to do. So if you didn't see that, that is on our YouTube channel, as are all the interviews we do with the Moose players or the Jets players. Everything ends up on our YouTube channel. Okay, Ezzy, well, that was an extended Minuk Moose minute, because we have no Mindell. Somehow it's 11:15, and we're still doing the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. This is like the old days when we were a 3-hour show, folks. Just remember, this used to be a 3-hour show until I finally put my foot down. I said 3 hours is too long. We're just going to do 2. But speaking of shows that are going to go long, Ezzy, why don't you we're going to end here with you giving a little preview of what's to come in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Dave. I appreciate that. 2 weeks from now, I think a lot of people in the chat know that it's going to be the official 15th anniversary of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Not exactly 15 years, but 1 day off. Yeah. February 4th, 2009 was our first Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I actually think it was called the illegalcurve.com Hockey Show at that point. Dave, I know you'll love that, as you are the editor and master of our website, illegalcurve.com. But yeah, it's going to be our 15th anniversary show. We're not going to give away who the guests are going to be, but I think we're planning on going a little bit longer, probably about 2.5 hours, to celebrate 15 years of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We should mention it's actually been 17 years of the website. 2007 is when we started illegalcurve.blogspot.com. It wasn't even illegalcurve.com at that point. It was illegalcurve.blogspot.com. So The website and radio show have been around for 17 years, which I know Dave, Drew, and I are very proud of the longevity. That's almost 2 decades.
Yeah, I know.
So it's pretty incredible when you think, like, I don't even, how old was I in 2009? 26, 25?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's, pretty incredible. So
Drew is 60.
Yeah, exactly. Drew is 60. So, we're going to ring in Drew's 77th birthday with the 50th anniversary of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. So hopefully everybody in the chat, everybody listening to the podcast is going to be able to tune in. We have some fun things planned for that show to celebrate. And like I said, we're not going to give it away because we want to keep it a surprise, but stay tuned to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and everything like that. And we're going to have some fun stuff that we've got cooked up for the next couple weeks leading up to the show.
There you go. That's the final word of today's Saturday morning Illegal Curve Hockey Show. He is Ezra Ginsburg. I am Dave Minuk. Drew Mindell was here, but he has left. So it's been a fun-filled and adventurous Saturday morning. We appreciate you spending however much time you've spent with us. Of course, you can watch the immediate replay. If you missed any of the show on our YouTube channel, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. Please, before you go, make sure you throw down a like if you can. And again, this is my own personal plea. I do this pretty much every week. Some people think it's annoying, but I still do it. If you can, drop a comment. We love the comments, helps the algorithm, and that's always good for us. So thanks very much for joining us. And again, as a reminder, we still have lots of content coming your way on illegalcurve.com. And of course, the Illegal Curve postgame show after the Jets and Senators will be available on our YouTube page. And then if you really want to stay tuned to us, Ezzy, I will of course have the recap from the Jets from the Moose and Grand Rapids Griffins games tonight on illegalcurve.com. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, thanks very much for joining us on this Saturday morning. I'm Dave Minuk. He's Ezra Ginsburg. This has been the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.